We would like to go ahead and get started with our city council meeting this evening, and would like to call this meeting to order. We would like to make mention of the fact that Councilmember Dave Spencer and Councilmember Tom McDonald are not in attendance with us physically, but they are to be on the phone. Dave and Tom, do we have you on the phone?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, Tom? Okay. Well, we have Dave, and we'll see if Tom joins us. So we would like to begin by having a prayer by Juliana Boyer-Goetz, pastoral coordinator from the St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Church, after which we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Kenna Jo Matthews of Habitat for Humanity.
Thank you for the invitation to pray today. And there may be a chance that the person we'd invited is on his way in. So,
okay.
Kenna, if somebody comes in, we'll let you know. So I invite you all to bow your heads, to take a moment to think of our God in heaven. God of all creation, we offer you honor and praise. You are the source of all that is good. You are the source of all of our blessings. Thank you for every gift that we have been given. We offer you thanks for the good that is in our community and in our country. We thank you for those who serve the city of Orem. May the wisdom, patience, and prudence that are gifts of the Holy Spirit be with the City Council and those who will present before them this evening. We ask for your blessing to be on all those in our community who are in need. You know their needs. Help us to be aware of them and to act with compassion on their behalf. We ask that you guide and direct this meeting so that all will feel respected and heard. And we offer these prayers in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Kenna Joe, I think you're on. Yes, have Bruce.
Hey, can I have the audience please rise? Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Kenna Joe. Thank you, Juliana. We appreciate it. We would like to approve the minutes of the City Council meeting of May 8th, 2018. And I would like to read one item with regards to that. Councilmember Lentz requested a correction on page 17 of the PDF or page 7 of the May 8th minutes on line 10 to please exclude Mr. Lentz from the list of council members who are generally okay with the earlier proposal. So that change has been made in the minutes. With that, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'd like to go on to the upcoming events. Do we have you on now, Tom?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good to have you here. We have a tentative ribbon cutting of our new pickleball court over behind the Sharon Park School. And that will be on this Thursday, May 24th at 5:15 p.m. On May the 26th, we have a ribbon cutting at 11 a.m. of the Telos Center on 870 West Center in Orem. On May the 28th, we have the Memorial Day cemetery program at 9 a.m. At the Orem City Cemetery. On June the 5th, we have the Imagine Orem City Center District meeting at noon. This is for all business owners and other concerned citizens, but mainly business owners and managers within the City Center District. Lunch will be provided, and we encourage everyone to attend. June 4th through the 9th is our City of Orem Summerfest program. We have a great program. We have Todd Peterson as our Grand Marshal. We have Jenny Oakes Baker and Dallin Bayless performing. Last year we had an excellent and rip-roaring hot dog eating contest. This year we have doubled the fun by adding a pie eating contest afterwards. And we're trying to find somebody who will participate in both, one after the other. So you can have dessert after dinner. So anyway, June the 6th, we have the City of Orem Summerfest VIP dinner and the concert afterwards. Again, on the 9th, we have the parade at 7 p.m. and the fireworks in the park, and it should be a great time. June the 14th, we have the pedestrian bridge groundbreaking ceremony at 9 a.m. over on the west side of the Front Runner Station. This is for the new bridge going from Front Runner Station all the way across the railroad tracks, the freeway, over to the UVU parking lot. And on the 16th of June, we have the City of Orem Ride with the Mayor, Cruise with the Council to meet at the Timpanogos Park at 8:30 a.m. with your bikes. We now have some beautiful women sitting towards the front, and we would like to invite them forward to present to us their invitation to Strawberry Days by Miss Pleasant Grove and her attendants. So please come forward to the microphone if you would to speak first, and then you can bring the goodies up here.
All right, sounds good. So
tell us who everybody is first.
we will. So we're your new Miss Pleasant Grove royalty, and I'm Taryn Christensen.
I'm Bailey Sheriff.
I'm Morgan Carlson. And I'm Genesee Boren.
And we're your Strawberry Days Rodeo Royalty for 2018. I'm Mikella Wall.
I'm Grace Green. I'm JC Carter.
Great.
We would like to invite you out to the rodeo first of all. That will be held June 20th through 23rd. Our little sheep riders start at 7 p.m. and then the show starts at 8 p.m. We'd love if you guys could make it. My attendants will kind of tell you a little bit more about what goes on there.
So the themes of the rodeo each night is Wednesday is Kids Night, Thursday is Family Night, Friday is Tucking Up to Our Pink, and Saturday is Patriarch Night.
So you can buy tickets online at strawberrydaysrodeo.com, or you can go to the Smiths or Macy's locations in Pleasant Grove and purchase them there. And be sure to buy them ahead of time because we're sure to sell out.
And we also have a lot more going on throughout the week of Strawberry Days. And so all of us are just going to talk about one of our favorite parts. Mine is the car show. I love being able to walk around and see all the people in Pleasant Grove and all the cars, the old ones. It's super fun to get to know everybody.
And my favorite part about Strawberry Days is the carnival. It's a great place to bring your family and celebrate Strawberry Days.
My favorite part is obviously the strawberries and cream. So when you guys come visit us, I recommend you get 1, 2, maybe 3 cups. I promise I won't.
I really love the baby contest. It's really fun to see the upcoming generation that Pleasant Grove is bringing.
And we brought you
Great. Well, we always love what you bring to us, and just to let you know, we love Pleasant Grove. It's a great community, and we always appreciate having you here, the beautiful queens and the beautiful rodeo queens. It's just great. So if you wouldn't mind, bring that up, and then we'd like to shake your hands. So right here. I would like to get a picture with you. Let's go ahead and shake everybody's hand.
Thank you.
Thank you. So just stay right here, and we're going to get a picture. How are you?
Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
You wanted to write the sheet.
That's gutsy, isn't it? Confrontation. That first couple so heavy-handed.
So we'll put one set of queens on one side, one set on the other. And hold the pie. Come on all the way over. Great. If you could send the pictures of Pete later. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. See you. Take care.
That's a wonderful thing to have happen every year, and we appreciate the Pleasant Grove royalty for doing that. We now would like to hear a report from our Heritage Advisory Commission. Kelly Kirkpatrick is the chairman, and we'd like to invite him up.
Mayor Brunst and City Council members, it's an honor to stand before you. Thank you for making Orem one of the best places to live in the United States. I've worn many hats in my lifetime. I've worn the garrison cap of the United States Air Force. I've worn a steel mill hard hat at Geneva Steel. I'm currently wearing a garrison cap of the American Legion, a veterans organization. Tonight I speak to you as the chairman of the Orem Heritage Commission. I'm here to invite all of you, that includes all of you, and all of the citizens of Utah County, to our celebration on Memorial Day at the Orem City Cemetery. The program will start promptly at 9 o'clock. I've arranged for 4 World War II warbirds to fly around the edge of the hill, turn around, come back. There will be a World War II veteran that will speak to us. The Brigham Young University Air Force ROTC will do a silent rifle detail. Our American Legion post will exchange the flags as we do every 6 months on the poles. We put new ones up. We will render a 21-gun salute. The bugler will render taps. That is kind of a sacred, solemn goodbye to those who have served and given their lives to the United States. We have a barbershop quartet coming to sing patriotic songs for us. We have a band comprised of musicians from all over Utah County to offer music. We'd ask you to say a few words, please, Mayor.
Be happy to.
This will take place at 9 a.m. at the Orem City Cemetery. The program will take approximately 1 hour. We also invite you to walk through the more than 1,800 crosses that our post has built. There are name tags on them for the veterans that are buried in the Orem City Cemetery and the Timpanogos Cemetery, which is on 900 North, 400 East. We do this every year. So I'd like to invite anyone who can hear my voice and all citizens of Utah County. Thank you very much.
So, Kelly, one thing I just wanted to say, the speaker is actually a veteran of the war in Iraq rather than World War II.
That's Doug Bell.
Yes.
Doug Bell. Okay.
Anyway, he's got some great stories.
Okay. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Appreciate your work on the Advisory Commission. We'd now like to have a report from the Summerfest Advisory Committee by Kenna Jo Matthews.
I guess I'm sitting down. Can you hear me? Okay. Mayor, City Council, it's a pleasure to be here today. It's been a wonderful opportunity to chair this year's Summerfest Committee, and I appreciate the introduction. Thanks, Mayor, for the introduction to Summerfest. We'll just tell you a little bit more about it. Actually, Debbie's going to tell you a little bit more about it in video in just a minute. But Summerfest will be June 4th through the 9th, and this year's theme is a smart place to call home. So our mission statement is engaging, celebrating, and showcasing the citizens and community of Orem through annual events, service, and recognition. And we'll play this video that Debbie put together for us about all the events. She was the star of the show.
You have your microphone there.
Hi, I'm Debbie Leroy on the Orem City Council. Excited to be here at City Center Park to invite you to come and join us for Orem Summerfest. The dates are June 4th through the 9th. We'll kick off the Summerfest on Monday, June 4th at the Orchard Park behind University Place at 7 p.m. The Timpanogos Storytelling Institute will bring a free family storyteller out. It'll be a great evening, and bring your blankets and sit on the grass. On Wednesday, June 6th at 8 p.m. at the Sierra Shell, we'll be featuring Jenny Oakes Baker and her family of 4, also Dallin Bale Bayless and the Utah Valley Symphony. Tickets are affordable. Bring your kids. They're only $5. General admission is $10. Tickets are available at summerfest.orem.org. Hey, I'm here with my grandson Tanner Albrecht. We are so excited that Thursday is going to be a family carnival starting at 5 p.m. on Thursday, June 7th. The tickets are only 75 cents. Great entertainment and free balloons for the kids. Do you like to ride rides? You want to come with Grandma? Okay, we're going. Okay, our next event is Friday, June 8th at 8 p.m. This is going to be a free concert in the City Center Park featuring David Osmond and the Caleb Chapman Orchestra. They are fabulous. This is an event you won't want to miss. finally, Saturday, June 9th, starting at 8:30, Cooper's Run is going to be taking place at Sierra Park and will include fun and games and activities. And then, of course, we have the night parade and the fireworks, which will wrap up Summerfest. Be sure to come out. It's going to be a great family event. We hope you can all come out. I'm Debbie Luray, and I hope you'll bring you and your family to Summerfest. It's going to be a great event. We promise it'll be loads of fun. Thanks.
Thanks, Debbie. That was awesome. So those are just some of the highlights. In front of you is our magazine, and there's more magazines at the back if anybody wants to grab one on their way out. But we have we have events every night that week, so every day and night that week. So would like to invite everyone to come out to Summerfest and join us. It looks like we've already had 1,800 views of your video already, Debbie. So you're pretty popular out there.
I'm probably related to half of them.
Oh,
hi, I'm Debbie Luray on the Orem City
I'm not used
Council. Excited to...
All right. I would like to thank our partnership committee this year. Our partnership committee has been able to raise over $64,000 to help with these events. So we appreciate all that they have done for us. And then we have a lot of sponsors. So we won't go through all of them, but if you can read the screen or look in the book, you'll see all the sponsors it takes to have this wonderful opportunity.
And our Grand Marshal is Todd Peterson.
Yes.
The owner of Vivint. So
he is. So we're excited about that. That's why we're the smart place to call home this year.
And one thing I might mention, he often sponsors our fireworks show. And I know he likes to have great fireworks. So since he's the Grand Marshal, I'm expecting our fireworks to be better than ever. So
that'd be good. I just hope we have fireworks. That's been my biggest fear as a chair, is we don't have our fireworks. So we're making sure there's fireworks. Okay. So, and then I'd like to thank my wonderful committee. We wouldn't be able to put this together without our wonderful committee, because you can see all of the people that are involved with us. They're all volunteers, and they're putting in a lot of their time to make this happen this year. And then our wonderful staff. I'd really like to thank Stephen Downs and Peter Wolfley. They have been amazing to work with, and all these other wonderful people among your staff. You have great staff in Orem, and they really want to make Orem Summerfest great. So thank you for letting us have them and helping us as well. So if anyone wants to find out more about Summerfest, they can grab a book or look online. And we just would encourage everyone in the room and all of Orem residents and Utah County residents to come join us for Summerfest this year. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. And appreciate again your work. Can we give Kenna Jo Matthews a round of applause? Sure, Debbie.
It's been a privilege to be on this committee as their City Council advisor. I think there's been some great thinking. There's been a lot of great fundraising, and I think every year that it improves. So I think this year will be the best we've ever had, and we'll just build on the great success we've had over the years. So thanks to everyone who's worked so hard.
And thank you, Debbie, for your good efforts there. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll now go on to the personal appearance portion of our meeting. And we have 3 individuals who would like to speak. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and that you give us your name when you come up to speak. First, we'll hear from Braden Santo, then Phil Snellgrove, and then Sarah Bateman.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Braden Santo. I live at 981 North, 1010 West here in Orem. I serve on the City Transportation Advisory Commission, and I'm the founder of the Orem Bicycle Coalition. First and foremost, I wanted to thank you for the leadership you provide to our city. I personally appreciate all the time you take to serve the residents and visitors of Orem. My primary purpose in appearing tonight is to officially invite each of you to attend a very special event. The Orem Bicycle Coalition has teamed up with Orem Youth Cycling Association and Orem City to host Orem Cycle Fest. This event will combine our annual Bike with the Mayor Cruise with the Council event, a local vendor expo, as well as the groundbreaking of our new mountain bike skills park. It's going to be at Timpanogos Park up Provo Canyon on Saturday, June 16th, with a continental breakfast starting at 8:30, lasting till 2, and the Bike with the Mayor event will start around 9 a.m. We're going to have several vendors there, including our local bike shops like Mad Dog Cycles, SBR Cycles, and other local vendors are going to be selling discounted product and providing demo bike rides for mountain bikes, for road bikes, and even the new electronic pedal assist bikes. So it's going to be really fun. We're also going to be working with the Provo Bicycle Collective to give away up to 50 kids bicycles. So it's going to be a really exciting event. To encourage people to ride their bicycles, we're going to be providing a free valet bike service. And when you check your bicycle into the bike service, you're going to get a ticket to claim your bicycle, and the other half of your ticket is going into a drawing. Participating vendors are asked to make a donation, either product or cash donation, and those product donations are going to be what supports the drawing. Cash donations will benefit the Orem Youth Cycling Association. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, get in contact, and we look forward to seeing you and your families at Orem Cycle Fest. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We'll now hear from Phil Snellgrove.
Thank you, Mayor Brunst and council members. I'm Phil Snellgrove, an Orem resident. In my last water bill came a notice indicating that there was a $900,000 surplus in the utility fund. Proposal was to transfer it to the general fund. I would like to make a suggestion that the utility rates, the water rates, be reduced, and I'll have a specific request in a minute. About 2.5 years ago, the council member Tom McDonald and I met with the head of Public Works and his associate, and they had proposed some extensive system improvements and a corresponding utility rate increase to pay for those. McDonald and I proposed to them, through some calculations that we showed them, that if they would extend those improvements, not over 5 years, but over 8 years, they would be able to reduce the rate increase that they proposed to 1/2. Subsequently, the original rate proposal was brought to council and approved, and we now find that there are surpluses created. Now, this is a little bit deceptive, because the statement here says, why is this important? Because it helps us keep property taxes low. But you will understand that raising taxes is one thing, but raising rates is the other. But they both end up taxing the citizens. And so my proposal is that rather than having surpluses, we reduce the rates, and I have a specific request that the first tier, instead of going from 1 to 15,000 gallons, be raised to 1 to 28,000 gallons, and that would partially offset the surplus. Now, I think this is in the interests of the citizens, and I would request that it be carefully considered. Perhaps the council would like to designate one of their members to work with the utility department to see if this can't be accomplished. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. One thing I was going to mention, we're actually going to cover that $900,000 surplus on an agenda item in a little bit later in our meeting and go through that. So I don't know if you're sticking around, but if you are, we'll have a full explanation of it. So I'd encourage you to stay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll now go to Sarah Bateman.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Sarah Bateman. I live at 521 West, 740 North, and I'm here to talk about the free swap coming up. The first iteration of the community free swap began approximately 10 years ago in the Geneva neighborhood here in Orem. From that first venture, the free swap, now a twice annual event in Orem, has grown into a solid grassroots organization committed to its twofold mission of sharing abundance and uniting communities. The free swap, which is an acronym that stands for Sharing We All Prosper, is like a pop-up thrift store where everything is free. People give, people receive, all are made better for it. We've committed to this venture by registering a logo and investing in bilingual signage and banners. With the help of volunteers, we have welcomed anywhere from 400 to 800 members of our extended community at each event, from children to young adults to empty nesters. Our job is to facilitate generosity within the community, and there's plenty of that here. I'll just quickly tell a couple of stories. One story in our community, there was a widow who had a garage full of her husband's tools that had been sitting there doing nothing, and with the help of her neighbor, they emptied out her garage, and those tools are now being put back to use, free of charge, being shared with some of the neighbors in our community. And there was another event where a young man brought a cane to give away, and there was another gentleman there who needed some assistance for mobility purposes, and they passed each other on their way, and he said, "Are you giving that cane up?" I said, "Yeah, do you want it?" And he said, "Yeah, my cane broke 2 days ago." So there are a lot of great stories that come from these events. So we would like to formally invite the city to join us on Saturday, the 2nd of June. That's for everybody here too. At the Rotary Pavilion in the City Center Park from 8 a.m. to 12 noon. If you have items in your home that you are ready to pass along, bring those donations anytime between 8 and 11:30, or come help us find new homes for all those donations. No donation is required. It is a completely free event. So bring a picnic, bring a brunch, make a day of it. It's a beautiful day at the park. So this is where we see together what a truly abundant life we share. For more information, you can visit freeswap.info or find us on Facebook at FreeSwap Sharing We All Prosper. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll close the personal appearance portion of our meeting and move on to our consent items. Our first consent item is a motion to cancel the July 12th, 2018 City Council meeting. It has been requested that that be moved under as to a scheduled item. Greg, we need to take a vote on that or not?
Traditionally, we would have the vote to move it to the scheduled item calendar.
So I would like to move that motion be moved to the scheduled items. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Do you need a roll call?
On a consent item?
Well,
nope. Okay. Tom and Dave, aye for both of you?
Aye. Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, so we'll move on to the second consent item, which is a resolution authorizing specified individuals to add or delete users to access and or transact with the public treasurer's investment accounts. I move that resolution be passed. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Okay.
Mayor?
So, yeah.
Because that one was a resolution, we do need the...
Okay. All right. So we will go ahead and take a roll call vote on that. I will move again that we pass this resolution authorizing specified individuals to add or delete users to access and or transact with public treasurer's investment accounts. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. And we'll start with Councilmember Brent Sumner.
Aye.
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 Tom and Dave?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. So that resolution passes. We'll now go on to our scheduled items. First one being a motion to cancel the July 12th, 2018 City Council meeting. Any comments on this?
I have a few.
Okay. Pardon me?
I thought we already did that.
No, we actually moved it down to the scheduled items so we could take a roll call vote on it.
I think you said July, so it's June.
We didn't say July. I said June. So canceling the June 12th, 2018 City Council meeting. If I said July, I apologize. Okay, go ahead, sir.
So perhaps the damage is already done here, but my concern is not necessarily this particular meeting, but the process that was followed to get to this point of canceling the meeting. We received in the mail a few weeks ago an invitation from BYU inviting members of the City Council to a dinner at BYU to meet with local officials. And I RSVP'd that I wasn't going to be able to make it because that was the same night as our City Council meeting. And a day or so later, I got an email from Mayor Brunst that we could try to move some of these scheduled items around so that we could move our meeting earlier in the day to accommodate the dinner, and then eventually those agenda items got moved. 2 of them got moved to tonight, 2 of them got moved to the later June meeting. This all happened by email. It was not in a public forum. My concern is I wanted to make sure when I ran for office that I was able to plan my personal schedule around my civic duties and not the other way around. And I'm afraid that if we go down this path of canceling our regularly scheduled city council meetings to attend a social dinner, that's a concern in my mind. So,
okay, appreciate that. One thing I might mention, first of all, we move our work sessions around depending on what we're doing. We have, I believe, moved city council meetings before. I believe that this is important. The main reason we typically go to one main dinner with the BYU president and his staff once a year. Our relationship with BYU is very important. They are, in fact, supporting our mass transit effort by giving free passes to all of the students. There are a lot of other interfacing that we do with Brigham Young University, and it's not often that we actually interface and have a dinner with the president and the staff. So moving the city council meeting, my suggestion was to move it to 4 o'clock or 8 o'clock. It ended up that we had a light schedule, so the meeting is proposed to be canceled. I feel like that is a proper thing to do so that this relationship is fostered and continues, and I believe that's important to our city. So I would like to make the motion unless there's other comments from the city council. Tom and Dave? Okay, I would like to move. I would like to move that we can't. I'm sorry, what?
I'm good with it.
Okay. I
was just going to ask,
Councilmember Sumner.
I was going to ask, did you have any concerns or complaints from those that potentially were on that agenda, the few?
Not that I'm aware of, unless, Jamie, you've heard something different. Okay.
Thank you.
And we have canceled city council meetings before where we've had nothing on the agenda. So I would like to move that the July 12th, 2018 city council meeting be canceled. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Boy, how am I getting July in there?
Bye.
June 12th, 2018 city council meeting be canceled, and we have a second over here, and we'll start with Debbie Lurie.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Tom and Dave?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. All right, the motion passes. We'll now go ahead and go on to a resolution, and it's not in July, requiring curbside recycling service for all new residential utility accounts and authorizing the city manager to sign an amendment to the Waste Management Service Agreement to acknowledge this change in recycling policy. Bren Bybee is our presenter, and we'll turn the time over to you, Bren.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This item would be consistent with the budget that's been proposed to you and that's on the agenda later in the evening for your consideration for adoption. This perhaps to be abundantly clear, this would just would be an amendment to the existing agreement to provide solid waste disposal services that would only affect new utility customers and would essentially keep existing utility customers under the same opt-out program. Over the last handful of years, we have seen an increase in our green waste recycling services, but our regular recycling services has stayed relatively average and static. If I can direct you to the comparative table in your agenda summary packet, council packet, you can see that a number of Salt Lake communities in the mid-90s moved to mandatory recycling, and over the last 10 or so years, a number of cities, primarily outside of Salt Lake County, have switched either from opt-out to mandatory or opt-in to opt-out. One city up in Centerville, they were one of the first to begin an opt-out program similar to what we have now, and they also require curbside residential recycling services for new utility customers. With Beth Holbrook with Waste Management Services, we met a couple of times with the Natural Resources Stewardship Committee, and they voted unanimously to approve and support the recommendation that is here before you as a resolution tonight. With that, this certainly would be additional incremental commitment to providing recycling services to our citizens, and happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
So, Brent, this does not affect our existing customers. This is only in place for new customers signing up.
Yeah, essentially kind of grandfathers in existing and would just apply to new utility account signups.
Okay. Any questions or thoughts? Councilmember Larry.
Will there be any flexibility, though, if someone, maybe this is a hardship, the $3 a month, or philosophically they just don't want to recycle? Will there be any flexibility on a case-by-case basis, or?
Essentially, no. The existing system would allows for some of that flexibility, but this would essentially require it for all new utility account.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Lentz.
And on that note, we do have a precedent in that the storm drain fee is not something that I, as a resident, for example, would be able to opt out of, but it's something that is for the public good. And if we look at it in the aggregate, we as a city save substantially any of this waste that we're able to divert to a recycling facility. In the Natural Resources Stewardship Committee's meeting, they talked about one community that essentially doubled the life of their landfill by diverting a lot of this waste to a different place where it could be reused and repurposed. And so I do think that there is value in encouraging and promoting this to the extent that we can. And I did want to mention one of the ideas that bounced around was on that note, Debbie, to try to see what we can do to optimize this for affordability, is potentially having different size bins. So that if I, for example, don't use as much garbage or produce as much recycling, could I get a smaller bin and save some money? But I think the concern, Bren, was the vehicles and the machinery that they use. It wouldn't necessarily be able to adapt to all these different size bins and still keep it affordable. So,
yes, my understanding is that essentially it's tailored to the existing totes or cans that exist currently.
Thank you.
Councilmember Seastrand.
Thank you. It shows that this would increase revenue by about, was it $25,000?
Yes, but that would be immediately associated with the cost of providing the service, so it would essentially be a pass-through.
While the city collects it, the cost to go out is basically exactly the same, right?
Yes.
So it's not a revenue generator.
No.
That's not the idea.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the council?
Hey, Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
So, Bren, so the new people that sign up or have to sign up, they cannot ever opt out, ever?
According to this amendment, this resolution, that's correct. Yes. Essentially, someone could opt to not put out, I guess, a recycling can, but already today, a recycling truck passes along, essentially all of the houses in the city, but those that use it are the only ones paying for it. So the idea would be that now everyone would be, over time, would be paying for it, that cost of sending a recycling truck around every home in the city.
Okay, no further questions?
Mayor, I
yes.
had a comment. Mayor,
yes.
This is Tom.
Go ahead, Tom.
My leaning is a different direction. My leaning is because of the inherent benefits that Councilmember Lentz said of reducing landfill cost as well as our footprint on the earth that we live in, is did we consider just making it mandatory like many other cities have for everyone instead of only for the new customers? Frankly, I would lean more to making it mandatory because of the inherent benefits, reduction in overall cost, and an improvement on our planet. Did we consider that?
And we actually have...
I think that's... Go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In the work session, Councilmember Lentz noted that that was that desire was expressed by the Natural Resources Stewardship Committee. Essentially, this proposed resolution here before you is kind of like I mentioned earlier, essentially a phased or incremental approach to help continue to bring people along to commit to recycling. So kind of from a managing expectation, I guess, tactic, where if new people, they'll know from the get-go this is part of our core services in providing solid waste disposal.
So I appreciate that. I don't know that I'm ready to move forward with what Tom's suggesting, but so I would like to make a motion that the City Council...
I have a question there.
Sure.
Mayor, I have a follow-on question.
Sure.
If the Jones family sells their home to the Smith family, do the Smiths then have to do it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. If no other comment, I would like to make a motion that the City Council adopt this resolution requiring curbside recycling service for all new residential utility accounts and authorize the city manager to sign an amendment to the Waste Management Service Agreement to acknowledge this change in recycling policy. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Luray.
Aye.
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 Can I comment?
Sure.
I struggle with this because I think this is a service that justifiably adds a lot of benefit to be able to utilize. But I'm concerned about forcing this habit on people. So I'm a big believer in recycling. I think it's a great thing to do. I prefer that other people are convinced enough that they opt in to do it. So I'm going to vote nay, just because I don't think it's something we should require.
Thank you. Councilmember Sumner?
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember McDonald?
Aye.
Okay.
Hold on, make sure I'm off mute. Aye, but I'd prefer to go all the way.
I understand. Councilmember Spencer?
Nay.
Okay. The resolution passes, and we appreciate it, Bren.
Thank you.
We'd now like to go to item 16, an ordinance approving the amounts to be awarded to the CARE grant recipients for the 2018 CARE granting round. Steve Downs is our presenter.
Mayor, Council, over the past few months, citizens of a Citizen Advisory Commission, which I'll list the names, and you have had an opportunity to hear from all these CARE applicants. And in meetings, we've discussed specifics of their proposals. And so while tonight won't go into all of the specifics, as those have been discussed numerous times, I did want to give an overview of the proposal that has been discussed most recently. So in 2013, the CARE tax was renewed by a 2-to-1 vote of our citizens to continue into the future. And what that began is a 50-50 split at that time between cultural arts and recreation. Each year we allocate money that has been collected over the previous year, and so any allocation made is on actual money in the bank from a previous year, and so we're not left in a tough spot if we've projected far greater than we received. And so this year we project $2,175,000 in collections. That would be split 50-50. Again, it'll be collected this year, allocated in the following year. What that results in is just over $1 million, $1,071,188 for each grouping, both recreation and the arts. Our applications this year were 16 mini and mid-major, which I'll discuss, and 3 majors. As I mentioned at the beginning, a big thanks to these citizens who took time out of their lives. These are ones with kids at home or plenty of other things that could use their time. They chose to spend it with us to hear from these different organizations and visit with them throughout the year to understand their needs. And they, in a large part, have led to this proposal that you'll hear tonight. So again, thank you to Lene Millett, Jeff Lamson, Annette Harkness, Jaron Molson, and Christine Alleman. On March 29th and April 12th, those presentations were made by the mini and the mid-major grant applicants. All grant applicants met the funding requirements outlined in our policies and procedures. On April 17th, the Care Advisory Commission and the City Council received reports of prior year's use from all three major grant applicants, those three being the CIRA, the Hale Center, and the Utah Metropolitan Ballet. A couple weeks ago, on May 8th, the City Council deliberated about how those monies might be spent in the year. And as far as that's the art side. The recreation side is we have a recreation advisory committee who over the years has studied the recreational needs that we have in our community. In 2015, a community survey was completed asking how residents would like to have their money spent. The recreation can only be used must be publicly owned facilities, and so it is a city-specific portion of the care tax. The recreation proposal tonight is allocated the following way. This is $1 million towards fitness center improvements. We've allocated last year $1 million as well. There was a proposal to have a total of 4 years worth of $1 million allocations towards the fitness center to at least get the ball rolling and make significant strides in improving and enhancing that facility. There's also a $15,000 set aside, which was at a request of a council member for an operational offset for co-sponsored groups. There's also $56,188 for additional recreation enhancements. As we've built projects, there's been continued additional money that needs to go to them, i.e., the Altogether Playground. There's been a large request for shade. We want to be able to do some of those things with this care money that's left over above and beyond these other requests.
Hey, Steve, David Spencer here. Can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
So I think on the $15,000 that was requested, I think if we go back 2.5 years ago, we did do a $30,000 right off the top of care tax for recreation co-sponsored groups for maintenance for city-owned facilities. And I think we should up it to $30,000, not $15,000. So that'd be my proposal if we could add that in.
And then and then taking it from the additional recreation enhancements?
Correct.
Okay.
Maybe it's just like the mini grants on the arts. You have the midi and the mid majors, and this would just be right at the top. $30,000 would be for the maintenance for the co-sponsor groups that are city-owned facilities.
And Dave, maybe you could speak to just the use of that money as far as how the savings get passed down.
So, I mean, every year each nonprofit group that are co-sponsored, the swimming, youth soccer, Ranger soccer, Celtic Storm, youth baseball, and UFL football, they all get a bill from the city the following year, say in I think April, of what they use, the fees and the maintenance. So if you take a look at youth soccer, they'll be billed $20,000 and for maintenance fees and participation fees, and that would offset that cost to help them, use some of the care tax for the maintenance of the fields.
So I would support that as well. We have extra funds, not extra, but our funds are higher this year than last. I believe that money is going towards the youth of the city, and I would support that as well. Councilmember Lentz has a comment.
So anybody here in the room or watching online, what you've seen is a textbook demonstration of why I am utterly frustrated with this care allocation process. And there is no science to it. We did a survey in 2015 to understand what the citizens wanted and how that was to be allocated, and we haven't stuck to that. So I guess my overarching comment on this whole process is I'm frustrated that council members just on a whim will start to allocate those funds without any scientific backing or justification. Thank you.
There is not really scientific. Sam, I think you're way off base. I've met with Carl Hurst, and he also met with Jamie, and I think this is a fair thing for care tax on recreation, and that's why I voted for care tax and the recreation, to help out the youth of Orem, and not just because the survey says this, it could be skewed, and you can't go 100% on a survey. It doesn't work that way.
So your concern is that the survey is skewed, but your personal interactions are not skewed. Am I understanding that correctly?
This is for every co-sponsor group, so it's not skewed at all. I'm not playing favorites in anything. And if you're trying to accuse me of that, I'll talk to you when I get back to town.
So we have Councilmember Seastrand would like to make a comment.
I'm looking at it from a technical standpoint and understanding. I mean, the language from the care tax ordinance was pretty clear. David, how would the savings to these organizations be used? So basically what you're saying is that these co-sponsored organizations, currently they're paying $30,000 for the maintenance, and you're saying we're not going to charge them that $30,000.
They're paying more than they're paying $52,000. So what I'm saying is, on swimming, if you take that, they really like to have a scoreboard for the pool, so they could get with Alpine School District and also support and also, raise those funds could help pay for the scoreboard for the city pool. So I think it's a win-win for the city, too.
Except let me ask you on that, because typically the way the process goes is if this is, giving funding to programs in the recreation side is not allowed. The way that you can spend money is for facilities. So if the intent is to take the funding that you're giving to the organization and you're having them then purchase facilities that are now become city-owned, it seems like you're bypassing the process, when in reality it would be to say, okay, if we need a scoreboard, then the care tax should just pay for the scoreboard, and there shouldn't be a change in the fee structure to the organization.
All I'm saying, that was just an example, but you're not going to give them any money. It's just the bill for the fees of the maintenance of the facilities. That's basically what they're paying for rental.
But that results in giving them extra money. So you're saying if somebody has they generate $40,000 in revenue from their fees to their patrons, that to the students or to the athletes that are part of their program, and part of that is they have to pay $10,000 to maintain the field. And what you're saying is they're still going to pay the $40,000, but now you're not going to require them to pay the maintenance fee. Then that, in essence, is giving them funding for their programs.
Well, it's a discount for the Orem residents that play co-sponsored sports.
So are you reducing the fees for the Orem residents?
No, we're not reducing the fees at all.
Well, then I don't see how that becomes anything different than...
The actual fees are in the budget are going to stay the same. And the invoice, the maintenance fees would be discounted with the care money. That's how we did it 2.5 years ago, I think, with mounds and blocks for the swimming.
Mayor, I would disagree with that assessment and look to some legal counsel possibly to say that I don't think that mechanism fits within the context of how the care tax was voted on and allocated. I think in essence this method gives funding to recreation programs as opposed to provide facilities for recreation programs.
And at the very least, I believe it violates the spirit of the law, the intent of those funds.
Jamie, you've got a comment? Okay, Greg?
Yes. So under the law, we can grant money for the ongoing operating expenses of recreational facilities that we own. So although we can't directly give the money to the co-sponsored groups, there is perhaps a way to accomplish what I'm hearing, in that if the $15,000 was granted for these ongoing operating expenses of our facilities, that could offset the amount that we charge them for the upkeep of the facilities, and that might have the same result everyone's trying to get.
So it's an operational offset, and the money is covering some of the operational costs. It does not go directly to the co-sponsored groups.
Correct.
So.
Not directly, but indirectly it does. In that we're saying we're not going to charge you as much, which to them then is an increase in the revenue. And if the synopsis or the scenario is, as Mr. Spencer indicated, that in exchange for that savings, then we're going to get a scoreboard out of it at the swimming pool, then I think we should delineate then what the savings is going to do or how that is going to come back around to benefit the city instead of just benefiting the organization. as a reduction or as an increase in their revenue income. Does that make sense? I mean, did I say that appropriately?
Well, the only reason I said the scoreboard was they've been wanting a scoreboard for 10 years or even longer. So, but that was just an example.
Then can we stipulate that? Is that, I mean, what we're saying is we're going to be giving additional funding from the care tax to these organizations, and it's an indirect way of giving it to them, because we're not going to give it, we're not writing them a check directly, we're just going to write a check to ourselves to pay for expenses they would typically pay for. And in exchange for that, we're expecting them to do some enhancement to the facilities in order to make that work. And how would that work? So if this swim team buys a new scoreboard, great. What are the other organizations going to do with the benefit that comes from the funding from this mechanism of not charging?
Any comments, Dave?
Well, we did the same thing 2.5 years ago. We gave $30,000 out of the recreation care tax to put in that pot, and Carl used it as he saw fit. Basically the same principle.
So the money can be used for operational expenses, per what Greg has said, and I think per what the care tax.
City operational expenses.
Yes, city operational expenses. So I think this is a proper use of that money. And with the increased funds that we have, I feel comfortable with the $30,000 towards that.
Mayor, can I just comment then that from that, that equates to, for the swim team, that's a $75 gift per Orem student. So they typically pay $150. We're giving them a $75 gift back that we're not going to charge them in maintenance fees for use of the facilities. For other organizations, it's $15, and it's, I mean, basically what you're saying is, and the challenge is we're not reducing. They're not paying less as a benefit of this perk. Their fees are not being reduced. The organization is just getting more money to operate within their parameters. And what happens to that?
The organization does not receive it. It goes to the city for operational expenses.
And instead of the organization,
I know you're saying indirectly, but what I am saying is this money has to go to the city for city-owned operations.
Right, and in exchange, we're not going to charge them for using the facilities, and in exchange, they don't change their fees, they experience an increase in revenue. And my question is, what go for? Is that just to pay greater wages? Is that to put more scholarships in place for students that want to participate? Is it to buy a scoreboard? We're basically giving them $30,000 worth of value without any accountability or any feedback that's tied to the use of that funding. That, to me, that doesn't seem like it really is what was intended with the purpose of the care tax on the recreation side. And that's because the focus was to say you use the care tax money to buy facilities we don't have. We buy a ballpark, we buy a bike park, we buy a splash pad in Palisades, we buy additional things that are resources that we don't currently have. The All Abilities Playground. You see what Provo is doing with theirs. They're actually buying new parks with their care funds. And so for me, I think that's where I struggle a little bit is I understand the intent is to make the programming more accessible and to help these independent programs be more profitable or be more sustainable, but I don't know that it fits with the intent of what the care tax law was meant to be.
So I would disagree because the care tax law does allow for operational expenses to be paid through the care tax to city-owned facilities. But let's go ahead and move on, if you can.
And we could, I mean, as it kind of compared to the mini and mid-majors on the art side, we could require potentially some type of reporting as to what these co-sponsors are doing with that.
But again, this is not going to the groups. This is money going to the city resources.
So they could show that they did a reduction in fees or something so that it's not a windfall to each organization. It's just a potential, like we do with the mini and mids.
Again, where it's not going directly to them.
What's that, Dave? Sorry.
I could always get with those groups and see, and report back if that's what we had to do. So,
Councilor Lentz?
And even if that were possible, and I'm not sure that it is, I'm not sure that would make me any more comfortable. In my mind, I'd rather, instead of going from 15 to 30, I'd rather go 15 to 0 and see that money going to recreation programs that benefit the whole city.
Okay. Steve, you want to continue on?
So the mini and mid-major, now this is again the art side, so again another $1,071,188. I won't go through each of them reading, but you can see the proposed award for each of those organizations. I do, of course, have their applications here if there's any specific questions. Totaling $66,246. There were some organizations that applied last year, didn't apply this year. Don't know the specific reasons. We did go this year to a reimbursement policy. We're requiring mini and mid-majors to show specifically what their money is going for. So they submit receipts. We reimburse on that. It's similar to our CDBG program. It has given us a very clear picture as to what the money is going for, as we have receipts that match every instance.
So the 4 we have down there never did make an application?
They did not make an application this year.
Okay.
Oh, you can tell by the amounts. It may be that some of them didn't feel like the reimbursement was worth the amount, potentially. I know the Utah Music Association is no longer functioning, and the Wasatch Chorale, we did reach out to multiple times, just never heard back. Major and facility proposal. So for our majors, we had, as I mentioned, 3 applicants: the Hale Center Theater of Orem, Utah Metropolitan Ballet, and the CIRA. And you can see the awards going to each of those, totaling $930,000 for the majors. As was mentioned at the end of our deliberation, this is the City Council did turn to each of these organizations, well, the 2 that received additional, and said, as this money may not be available in the future, we'd ask that you identify one-time uses, or that it be considered a one-time above and beyond. Now, everything here is one-time, as there's no binding into the future as to what you would have to allocate. So we did have conversations with both the Hale Center Theater and the CIRA about opportunities with that additional money for their programming as it relates to our centennial celebration, as we're looking at a one-time opportunity, and both expressed some interest in participating that way. Then we also have some money that was set aside for facilities. Arts Council, some public art, both with the library and through the Arts Council, totaling an additional $11,000 with last year's money, which would put a total of about $20,000 for public art, combining last. And then facility funding of $63,942. This can go to arts-related city facilities that the city owns. The 2 mentioned there, the Cirrus Shell and the auditorium, but in any event, it has to be a city-owned facility. So what your total allocation is here is,
Councilmember Sumner's got a question.
I just had a question on that, $63,000, $64,000 for contingency. I would like to see that more specific. I mean, you say shell and auditorium, but that's still pretty broad to me. And I guess we're just putting it in a bucket, and maybe next year we'll spend it, maybe we won't.
Yeah. In fact,
should we suggest that we categorize all the large organizations as well and ask them specifically where they're going to put that money?
Well, I think you do.
No, you're saying like Sarah has one bucket, Hale Center has one bucket. That's what
I mean. Are we gonna piece apart 63,000 and not 340,000 or 570,000?
We don't want to do that. No.
No, but I think they give you a report of where it's gone on their applications from previous year. Is that correct?
I'm actually okay. We've got Sarah Shell and auditorium there, whether it's 40 to one and 23 to another, or vice versa. I'm comfortable with it.
Okay.
And we have, we discussed this kind of master planning of the shell, and we've started to solicit bids just to see who is out there that does this work, and we anticipate by next year we'll have more specifics as to what costs might look like, what opportunities might be with the shell. We know what they are with the auditorium as it is now. So the total allocation totals this $2,175,000, which is the amount that will be available July 1 that will be collected this year. Obviously, we make some estimates that are conservative for the last couple of months as we finish out a fiscal year. But you can see the amounts given there as the proposal is currently. So I'll turn it over to you to discuss further.
Any comments? Dave? Tom? Councilmember Lentz?
No, I'm good with the proposal.
I'm good.
So just to put in perspective, I had raised the concern earlier that we did the survey and then we've essentially ignored those results. And if you go back to the slide that had the breakdown for, I mean, the Sarah Shell and Auditorium were two of the top things that our citizens would like to see us invest in because, I mean, those are our city assets. And the number one message I got from that survey was our citizens want us to invest in our existing parks and programs and assets. And in my mind, if we put money to the Sarah Shell and it comes out of the Sarah budget, that's looked at, well, we're penalizing the Sarah. But the Sarah directly benefits if we upgrade and maintain the Sarah Shell, and we as a city benefit because we have an obligation to maintain those assets so that they don't fall into disrepair. So our overall budget for arts went up about 6% this year. If we just simply increased last year's award by about 6% and rounded off to the nearest 5,000, that would put the Hale Center at 335, the ballet at 20 still, and Sarah at 555. And that would free up an additional 20,000 that we could put toward making those upgrades at the Sarah Shell.
Okay. I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that this...
Comment, Mayor?
Pardon me? Yes, I was asking for comments. I thought we were done. Go ahead, Tom.
So I don't have a light to turn on here. To Steve Downs' point, some of this extra money is going for centennial recognition, and so that, it seems to me, should be over and above that 6%. And so, to me, that kind of softened the additional expenses if they're spending some of it on centennial events.
Okay. Any other comment?
Be specific on what those centennial events were or the amount that needs to be spent there? Is that, if that's an assumption that we're making, do we need to take it out of an assumption mode and into something a little more specific? I'm not sure.
I think we encourage them to towards the centennial efforts.
So by motion, you could require that additional amount is spent on centennial.
The entire. I don't know if Tom was saying the entire additional amount, or if he was saying just the above the 6%. What amount of the additional for both the Health Center Theater and the Sarah are you thinking needs to go towards the centennial event, Tom?
Well, my thinking was all of it, but the details of that have yet to be worked out. I think Stephen volleyed that ball. I don't know the details he might have.
Yeah, I have had conversations with both. My direct conversations were with Jeff Fisher with Hale Center Theater, and then with Adam Robertson at the Sarah. Both expressed that interest to do that. That they could. Now the specifics, it may change on depending on who you talk to them, and they're both here in the room, I guess. But they actually,
Jeff is here, but Adam had to leave. Oh, he's here. Okay. They both told me they were leaving, but it looks like they stayed.
I think I'd like to get a little bit of input on that, if that's how everybody understands it, because I don't know. There wasn't really much specific. The general idea floated was this is to be seen kind of as one-time money. Here's a one-time event that actually could be beneficial for both these organizations, as well as could tie in with the centennial celebration.
I think, one of the. Oh no, I'm sorry.
But I don't know if there were anything more specific to that. So I wouldn't mind hearing comments from the organizations if that's how they understand it or what. But I don't know.
Yeah, I know. One of the remarks I know was if this money could maybe potentially not be there next year, don't adjust your programs in a sense that if the money wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to maintain, those programs. So with that said, I
don't know if it's, I think it'd be, I know, but you have to wait a second. Let me speak. I think it might be hard to say we're going to spend $45,000 on one concert or whatever, but I think the idea that they said they would like to use that money towards the centennial events. So anyway,
and frankly, it could be very easy to do it. You know, they 525 is what they received last. You're speaking obviously to the people that concerts, which is the Sarah. 525 they received last year. They were able to do all of their operations. An additional 45 could easily be said to spend on something specific, without having to hurt what their operations are currently.
Councilmember Larray?
I like the idea that we encourage them to look at a centennial event, but I'm not sure I want to tie every additional dollar has to go to that.
And we're talking just 7% of their allocation, right? That, again, as we're speaking of concerts, 45 is 7% of a $570,000 allocation.
Okay. I don't really want to tie it to the dollar, but I want to generally encourage them. Please consider a centennial event with the extra money we gave you, and give them a little flexibility with the idea that they will do something for next year with the 100-year anniversary.
I would agree with that. So, yes, Councilmember Sumner, your button is fine.
Okay. I just want to say I don't think we should tie them either to a specific amount. Both the Hale, Sarah, they're long-standing professional businesses run by professionals. If the city gives them a charge to help us with the celebration centennial, I guarantee they'll follow through with it.
Any other comment? Okay, well, I would like to make a motion that the City Council approve the amounts to be awarded to the CARE Grant recipients for the 2018 CARE Granting Round as listed, with the exception that $30,000 be put towards the operational offset for co-sponsored groups on the recreational side. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Sumner.
I have no problem with that 30,000. Aye.
Okay.
I have a problem with the 30. Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Dave and Tom?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. Tom?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so the ordinance passes as listed. We'll now go ahead on to item 17, which is a public hearing. This is about a PD 35 amendment on patio covers. This is amending section 22-11-48 D2 of the Orem City Code to allow patio covers to encroach up to 10 feet into the rear yard setback in the PD 35 zone. Jason Bench is our presenter.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Is that on? So I have Marshall Matson here next to me. He's the one that made the application, lives in the development. What he's proposing is the opportunity for them to modify the PD zone to allow some open air, non-combustible patio covers, typically on the, I'm assuming the south side, but it may be north side as well, for their development. You can see the main issue are these homes along there that have the south-facing exposure. This is the picture of those units. So the Planning Commission did review this and did make a recommendation. The council also approved it. It does give them then the opportunity to add this patio cover without the walls within 10 feet of the property line. Be glad to address any questions, or if Mr. Matson has any.
So yes, I'd like to ask the question, what direction are these facilities facing and what is the reason for the request?
So my name is Marshall Madsen. I'm president of the HOA. Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. The nature of the request is so that patio covers can cover the patio. It's very hot. It's not a usable space in the summer, even in the evening. And there are those who would, so the original ones that were, those there face south.
Okay.
Okay. But the proposal is not limited to the south. It would also include the ones on the east and the ones on the north if they wanted a patio cover as well. But
So who's paying for this? Is each individual owner paying for it, or is the HOA paying for it so that everybody gets it?
Each individual owner would pay for it.
Okay. And what's the cost for one of these?
I didn't come prepared for that because each individual owner.
Okay.
What we are doing is trying to frame a guideline in that they wouldn't be combustible. They would fit the architecture and surroundings.
And have you taken a survey of the members in the HOA as to what their feelings are and where they're at?
Yes, sir. 100% of them would like that.
Okay. And you think 100% would actually do it?
No.
Okay.
At least not initially.
But 100% want the opportunity to do it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions from the council? Councilmember Larry?
I did go out and meet with some of these homeowners and looked around, and I think it's a reasonable request. A lot, especially those ones on the north side. They showed me how the sun comes, and so I think it's a reasonable thing. So I did meet with the homeowners, and they were appreciative of the opportunity that we would consider this. So I think it's a good opportunity if they choose to add that.
We actually had 4 members of the council come, and we appreciate that.
How old are the units that are here in the HOA?
3 years.
Okay.
At the oldest.
All right. So this was never proposed when it was built or thought about?
Apparently, I defer to Jason here, that was originally not.
Yeah, they had obviously a specific buildable area. You can see out there on the green lines. They basically maxed out their buildable area. So now they're coming back because the cover doesn't now fit within that area. They need to modify the.
I remember when we approved these.
Yeah. So I mean, in hindsight, that probably would have been better to calculate that into the development, but that's for some reason an oversight until they built them and realized that the sun is obviously hot in the west.
Okay. Any other comments from the council?
I have one, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Tom.
I was one of the city councilmen who visited with these neighbors and also drove through the area, and frankly, I'm very impressed that they worked with Jason and the team there to come to a solution that now Jason feels good about as well. So I want to commend both the neighbors and our staff who got to a reasonable solution on this, so thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up. This is a public hearing. Open it up for anyone who would like to make a public comment. We request that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and give us your name. Seeing as how no one is coming forward, we'll close the public comment portion of our public hearing and bring it back to the council. Any comments or questions?
I'll make a motion, Mayor, if you're ready.
Okay.
I'll move that we amend Section 22-11-48D2 of the Orem City Code to allow patio covers to encroach up to 10 feet into the rear yard setback on the PD 35 zone only.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just
Okay.
to clarify, did you say unenclosed patio covers? Did I miss that?
It is, but no walls. Yeah.
Okay.
The way that it's stated, yeah.
Yeah, I did the way it's stated.
Okay, got it.
Did I say unenclosed?
I didn't hear. Maybe I just missed it. So
I said encroach.
Encroach.
Okay. Well, yeah, unenclosed is right before unenclosed patio cover. I just wanted to make sure that we read what was actually proposed. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's take a vote. Debbie, we'll start with you.
Aye.
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 Tom, Dave?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the ordinance passes. Appreciate it. Good to have you here.
Consideration.
Thank you. We'd now like to go on to item 18, which is also a public hearing with regards to the Lakeview Warehouse Park OS5 zone, changing it to an M1 zone, amending the zoning map of the city of Orem by rezoning the property at approximately 1750 South Geneva Road from the OS5 zone to the M1 zone. And Jason is our presenter. Could you introduce our applicant?
So this is Jordan. He's, I'm assuming, working with Mr. Mansell on the O'Toole. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's representing Jeff, who cannot be here at the meeting tonight.
Jeff Mansell?
Mansell, who's
Okay.
the owner of the
Right.
property. Yeah. So, Mayor, members of the council, if I can just give you a brief background of this area. As you well know, that it was annexed in 2015 by the City Council. As part of that, there were three options that were proposed at the time. Staff went through the evaluation of the water services and sewer and all that kind of stuff capacity-wise. Did present three options to the council at that time. I'll just briefly go over them. Option A was a mix of high density and some medium density, which is more of a medium density option. Option B was to include all of the light industrial, or all the properties as light industrial, as was outlined in our strategic plan. Option C was the one that was actually adopted, which allowed low density on the east side of Geneva Road and light industrial on the west side of Geneva Road. At that time when that was adopted, the City Council also adopted an OS5 zone, which is more of a holding zone. It's a 5-acre zone, knowing that probably nobody was going to develop at that, so it was more of acting as a holding until such times as applicants were ready to develop. The applicant has come forward and wants now to rezone. You can see the properties outlined, these two properties, totaling just under 12 acres of property, and wants to now rezone them to the M1 zone, which does match the light industrial designation. As part of that, as you're aware, the proposed Lakeview Parkway will also come through the area. You can see the subject property, so the Lakeview Parkway will be on the west side of this property. Geneva Road will be on the east, so it's going to be bounded on both sides of the major roads. The proposal is an office warehouse facility, similar to the business park, which is what the strategic plan outlined would be a prime location for the expansion of that park. So staff took this to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did make a recommendation because it does match the general plan designation, recommended that the council rezone it to the M1 zone. I'd be glad to address any questions that you have.
Could you tell me if this was passed, when you would start and when you would complete?
We would like to start in July.
Okay, of this year?
Yeah, of this year. We've submitted for site plan yesterday,
okay.
Contingent on today.
And I didn't count how many units. How many units are you looking at?
So we'll have 5 buildings. There's going to be one 40,000, that square one in the very back, and then 37's next to it, 35, and then 2 30,000 square foot units.
So it looks like you have 5 units per building?
Yeah.
Okay. And you feel the demand is there in the community?
Yeah, there's a lot of small 10,000 square foot rental commercial users that are looking for building space for warehouse, small office, kind of one office.
So how tall would these buildings be?
About 25 feet tall,
okay.
For racking and warehouse.
And what would you rent them out for?
That we are not sure yet.
I mean, you have a general idea.
Yeah, it'd be right around 64 to 69 cents a square foot. That's our tip.
And each unit's about how much square foot each?
30,000 square feet is the big, or 37's the biggest.
But I mean, on the ones where you have 5 per building, how much?
We'd split them up to as much as the user would need.
But if you had 5 of them, are they 2,000 square feet, 6,000 square feet?
It's really up to what, I mean, the user could come in and say, I want the whole building. And then we have
right. So, I mean, those buildings where you have 5, that's a 30,000 square foot building?
Which one are you looking at? I'm sorry.
First one on the top on the right.
The top right one is 37 or 35,000. So we could split that up to 555.
Okay.
Or, it's really just we do it a lot with our business parks in Salt Lake City and Provo, where we'll build a shell and then the tenant will come in and say, I need 25,000.
So you'd be about $3,600 a month on one that's about 6,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Seastrand.
Just as we look at that map, then, so the property to the far left, is that the road? That's road dedication that that is part of the.
So not necessarily dedicated, but holding it for future dedication.
So when it's time to put the road in, there would be a purchase transaction that would take care of the purchasing that at a
correct
fair market value.
What he's willing to do is hold the building, so we don't obviously have to buy a building and the property. He's willing to hold the property. We will end up buying the property and installing the street, but he's not encumbering it with infrastructure.
With this particular zone proposal, what do the typical transitions, or what are the neighbors to the north of Johnson's going to see along that northern property line there? Is there landscaping requirement? Is there fencing? What's the typical appearance they're going to see from their farm perspective?
The frontage on the Geneva Road would need to be landscaped, but not necessarily they would have to be enclosed. If it's going to have any outside storage, they'd have to enclose it with a side obscuring fence.
So is there a fence all the way around?
That I don't know.
No, so we will have the offsets for landscaping all around the whole business park. The two back units, or the one unit in the back, will have yard space, which will be enclosed, so they won't be any of that storage. But none of the other buildings will have the ability to store on the yard, just inside the building.
And then this shows what, 3 trees on the north and the south property line?
There will be more landscaping. This was just that
was part of, I guess, what the question. Within this zone, what is required for landscaping around it?
It's going to be on frontage requirements, and then up to 10% parking lot landscaping.
How big of a landscape strip do you think that would be on? How big a buffer landscaping would there be there?
On the frontage of Geneva, or
no, on the side yards?
Probably 10 feet. 10 would be the minimum requirement.
With trees and grass, is there a berm there or anything? Or
yeah, there has to be enough for the runoff water, and then the runoff water in your city requires to go through landscaping before it hits the storm drain. So we have to put landscaping in between all these buildings for the roof drains to run off into the landscaping before it hits any of your storm drain.
So because this is a concept plan only, and they've just submitted for the actual site plan, we haven't really had a chance to look at it, but there are requirements for parking lots to be landscaped and things like that.
That's why I say from a zoning standpoint, it's what goes with the zone.
There will be requirements, yes, but I don't specifically, without reviewing it, know what those would be as far as spacing of trees and things on the north or south.
Okay. Can you tell me what's on the east side of the Geneva, right in front of this property? Is that farmland, or is this where that one housing development was being proposed?
So the one that we just the council went and toured, that's this facility right there, and this is the Taylor farm right there.
Is that the Dale Johnson home right there above it?
The Dale Johnson
on the west side.
This home right here. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yep. So across the street, you have the AC's plant. You have the Cherry Hill farm, which is that's in an easement, so that's not going to be changed or transitioned.
Yep.
Further property down, where is the property that is designated that they just got approved, the single family residential development?
That is right.
It's down towards the southern part there, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And then, of course, Mr. Mansell is developing that with the PD, the twin home.
With the townhomes.
Townhomes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Lentz.
So regarding Mr. Johnson's home just to the north there, and I think all of us probably heard from Mr. Johnson and some of his concerns there. Looking at the general plan and the zoning, my gut feeling is telling me that this type of development would probably continue north in that area where we're not really expecting any kind of residential development north of this property in question, and it would likely stick to that light industrial. And so the concern is, if that home stays there, is it going to be kind of surrounded as this island of a single family home next to light industrial? Across the street, are we expecting that to...
Can you go back to the picture, Jason?
Are we expecting that to stay with low density residential throughout that corridor?
That's what we're encouraging, yes. We've had some applicants wanting to go higher, medium, or high density, and we're discouraging them because of the general plan.
And do you expect if new homes were built over there across from this type of development, would they have the same kind of concerns as what Mr. Mansell had expressed with his home that's already existing there?
Mr. Johnson, you mean?
Or I'm sorry, did I say Mansell? Yeah, sorry, Mr. Johnson. Yeah.
They may have some concerns. Obviously, it's separated by Geneva Road, but we have residential homes next to many light industrial developments throughout the city and throughout other communities as well. So I don't know that it would be an issue. They're not going to be facing Geneva Road. They're probably going to have access directly into their development and then access on internal roads. So I don't think there would be as big a concern as some may think.
And as far as traffic concerns, if that home remains there, just getting in and out of the driveway and things like that, would a development like this make it a lot more difficult to be living there and getting off and on to Geneva Road?
Well, it'd be part of their widening portion. I know Mr. Mansell to the south is doing his part to the widening. This project will also have that widening to have the decels and different things on it. And eventually the whole Geneva corridor will be widened. Mm-hmm. I would imagine once the Lakeview Parkway is completed, their main traffic will come on that street and Geneva Road will be less active. That's going to be, 5 years or so, but there will be an increase in traffic, sure.
And is the existing driveway, is it on the south end of that property? Is it essentially the border with the property in question tonight?
I believe their access is here.
Yeah.
But I think they also own this property behind as well.
Okay.
So it's a lot. His house is there, but he also owns the bigger chunk of property as well.
Okay. Any other questions from the council? Okay, so this is a public hearing. We'd like to open it up to the public. Anyone who would like to come forward, please hold your comments to 3 minutes and give us your name. Sure. You want to hand one down to Jamie? Can I have another one?
This handout basically shows a little bit better view of the situation that we're in. Oh, sorry, my name's Daniel Johnson. Sure. I'm Dale Johnson's son, so I'm here representing them as they're out of town for some family business. The yellow piece right in the middle is the piece in question. The red piece is the Johnson farm. And then the second page is a little bit closer up, view of just the Orem side. Obviously, the first reason I'm here is I don't want the zoning to go through. We would like to maintain the family home as a family home. We'd also like to maintain the community. I have a few reasons here. I wasn't expecting a 3-minute time, so I'll skip some of them. The main reason is the community does not want industrial. I would think that would bear the most sway, but it is not up to date. One point I'd like to make is that Geneva Road, within a few short years, will not be the division that it is right now. Nowhere along the 3-mile stretch from where Geneva Road starts on Center Street and Provo to this point is Geneva Road a division between zoning. It is residential across both sides. It has never been seen as a barrier to development, and it shouldn't be seen as a separation between industrial and residential. This would create an island. Everything to the south of this property is residential. Everything to the east is zoned residential. Everything to the west and to the north is in agricultural easements or in agricultural protection. So for all intents and purposes, this would create an industrial island that will not be contiguous to any industrial property for many years to come. It would make much more sense to make it residential, continue the residential from Provo all the way to this point into the east side of Geneva Road, so that that community remains intact for the 15, 20, 30, 50 years, however long, until those agricultural protections are cease to be or change or whatever may happen. But this will create an industrial island in the middle of a residential community, and that is not what we want. It also will make the east side of Geneva Road much less desirable. The east side of Geneva Road is between 10 and 40 feet higher than the west side of Geneva Road. In particular, the Johnson land, the east side is probably about 40 feet higher. So if you build a home on the east side, even if you put a wall next to Geneva Road, you will see right over the wall into this industrial park. Nobody wants to live next to that. None of you would want to live next to that. It makes sense to maintain the residential. One last point. Can I go another 15 seconds?
15 seconds, sure.
Okay. The city has already been willing to change and deviate from the general plan. They've made 58% of the land in this area has already been changed from industrial to residential or a little bit of commercial. And the city should continue to, as they've seen fit already, to run the rest into residential.
So one question before you sit down. What are your family plans for your land?
We'd love to stay there. My parents would love to stay there. I personally, with my wife, have been saving money so that when we could develop into this land, that we could build our family home on that land. We want to stay in.
So you want to do residential on your land?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Low density residential.
Any other comments during our public hearing?
Byron Taylor. I'm just wondering, how did Lakeview get designated as the dumping area for anything but single-family homes? That seems to be the trend. I've heard that stated in this meeting that it is expected that there will be no residential development in this area. I totally don't understand that. You look at Provo, west side of Provo, to our south. You look at Vineyard to our north. Both communities have found a way to put a lot of single-family dwellings in, particularly Ivory Homes to our south. Many single-family homes. Why is our area, why is Lakeview designated or thought to be not acceptable for single-family homes? I don't understand that. I agree with everything that Danny has expressed. I don't think it's desirable. I don't think it's good for our community. I would simply make an appeal to you there's a lot of history in Lakeview, and I understand that doesn't mean anything to any of you, but I think something you can relate to is the desirability of a community. Lakeview has a unique history. The path we're on is going to totally obliterate any semblance of that unique history that we have. I think single-family homes are much more compatible and appropriate with our history, and I would simply appeal to you as you make decisions to consider these things. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Public comment. I'm sorry, Debbie.
Elaine Schofield, 1511 South Geneva Road. Lakeview was founded in the 1850s, so we have a lot longer history than the city of Orem does. And we want to maintain some semblance of our history and our sense of community, and light manufacturing does not do that. I agree with the other two previous speakers. Thank you.
Just by way of record, our first inhabitant up on the Provo bench came in, I believe, 1855, so we're pretty close. But it was Provo bench. Any other comments from the public? Yes.
I'm Laurie Brewster. I own the property that's just west of that land with my family, and as I was out there tonight looking at the beautiful view of the lake, and there's just unmatched beauty in that area, and to obstruct it with commercial or light industrial would be a sad day for your community when you have open space and beautiful area. To just turn it into even light industrial should be unacceptable for all the residents here. You should be worried more about your, what kind of community you want, and consider the land use. Single family, the children that could play there, but where you have industrial things, I just want to say that I'm against it as a landowner to the west.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the public? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of our public hearing and bring it back to the council. Any comments from the council? Councilmember LeRae.
I'm just wondering, is there a way to buffer in between this light industrial and the residential, the Johnsons, more than just the 10 feet? Because I always hate to bait and switch something if someone thinks it's going to be residential. I always like to have a larger buffer, more landscaping, so that their view's not obstructed, or or at least it's more of. Is there a way, as a compromise or a way to goodwill, to increase that landscaping? And I'm saying for you on the north side.
Well, already on the north side, that is a gravel road between us and and I'm sorry, not knowing the name of that resident, which is 20 feet wide. That goes all the way back, that we can't touch because there is a pipe underneath. And then there will be another 12 feet of landscape. So there will be a buffer of almost 25 feet between us and them, or more.
But generally speaking, a resident doesn't like to look at their thing and see, even though these are attractive buildings, they don't like to see offices or industrial stuff. So I'm just asking you, do you have enough property to move down and add even a wider strip of buffer zone? Do you own more property that you could shift it all down?
We don't own any more property than what is shown there. I mean, we're trying to fit all the parking limits with the city limits on the size of the building with parking, so that we can qualify for what code meets.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Lentz.
Ryan Clark, would you mind coming up for a little bit? Ryan had shared some things in our pre-meeting that I think would just help us frame this in the perspective of how this impacts, our long-term overall economic plan. As this.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Lentz. Just as a reminder, in our economic development strategic plan that the council adopted in 2014, the number one goal in that plan is to increase the sustainability of the city's tax base through increased property values. And there's two strategies listed. One of those is Class A office development, and the second is to encourage business park development in the southwest annexation area. So this document guided this zone change when we originally annexed the property in and settled on industrial in that area. A couple of important statistics right now in the market. As of May 1st, 2018, Jared Hunt, one of the leading industrial agents in the area, noted in a seminar that we have a 2.5% vacancy rate in industrial in the county. Industry norm is 5 to 7%. And even if they were to build another 1 million square feet in development, we still would not be up to that industry norm. So there's a huge demand for industrial, and it's an opportunity for the city to expand our industrial park that is already down encroaching in that area from the north, that borders the other Johnson farm that is a family member, I believe, to Dale, maybe distantly. And he has slowly sold his property off as U.S. Synthetic has expanded. And so I think that's why city staff is centered upon this industrial use. It also has a lower impact to the sewer system, and so your sewer improvements don't cost as much, and that's what the entire plan has been based on, is that lower amount of sewage usage down there with what's being built. Also, something to keep in mind is as the Lakeview Parkway connects into Geneva Road and crosses the Johnson property, that's going to turn that into two hard corners, and there may be a possibility of commercial zoning taking place on those two down the road if the Johnsons determine that that's economically viable for their needs. So there may be an even higher and better use on some of that property. But keep in mind the Lakeview Parkway and the corridor does connect directly to the Provo Airport. And so there's going to be demand as that airport grows for shipping and warehouse needs in this area. So just some background from the economic development side of things.
Thank you,
Ryan. Any other comments from the council? Dave or Tom, either one of you have anything to say? Okay, pretty quiet.
No, I'm good.
What?
I'm good here.
Okay. Question for you. You're building the residential to the south, is that correct?
We are not involved in that's
okay.
Jeff is just involved in that, but we are partnered in this with him.
Okay. All right. Brent?
I just thinking here, all of us, well, not all of us, but some of us came from a Orem Chamber of Commerce Summit and they talked about our housing shortage. Ryan mentioned the shortage for industrial, but I think housing is even more critical than that. Just throwing it out, how many residential homes could you get in there at R8?
I would imagine probably 30 to 40, maybe less. 12 acres.
In this area, okay. I'm having a hard time fitting this with the area around it, and someone mentioned the Provo moving west, and with all residential. I'm just having a hard time coming to grips with industrial in here.
Okay, any other comments?
I'll make a comment.
Councilmember Lurie? Oh, I'm sorry. Mark?
Thank you. These are hard issues, and we appreciate all those that, one, not only own property down here, but also get to go through this process and try to help figure out what's the right pathway forward. These are not as easy. If I can recall, so the concept of annexation came to the city council as a result of the property owners that said we don't want to be in the county because our only option is to do 5-acre lots, 5-acre residential, and that's why the OS5 property was transferred over in terms of when we did the change in the master plan was let's keep it with what the current county option is. So for all of this property, the property owners that still have property, they could continue to develop their property the same way as it was with the county property, as in 5-acre lots based on the OS5 zoning. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we're not forcing other people, or the annexation wasn't intended to force other people to do anything different than what they currently had the rights to do under the county. The difference was that for those to develop the property, and that's why they were asking, there needed to be a method to be able to get sewer and water and development services to be able to allow them to develop their property. And in the process, we went through a fairly lengthy process. I don't remember how long it took, but there was working with Provo City and with county and with a number of things to be able to come to the annexation meeting. And I'm trying to remember if this was the one that went until 2 in the morning.
It was.
That there was a lot of discussion and a lot of angles and a lot of looks from different perspectives. And there were the 3 options that were basically presented. Can you show me those one more time there, Jason? Sure. And I think to the point that was kind of made by several to say, the intent is to say we want to try to keep this area fairly rural and not have it be a lot of high density and not have it be too dissimilar than what it is. I think those were some of the questions that we looked at in developing the master plan. And the master plan that looked at in option A, which had the medium density residential, I don't think that was approved or I don't think there was much support for that particular option. So that was taken off the table. The other option, which was for all the low, for this one here, to make it all light industrial in order to have that be part of a factor, which from a standpoint of maximizing value of the property owners, that typically is light industrial has a greater valuation than single family residential. If my limited experience in residential, in real estate, makes sense, that actually increased property valuation for most, but it also said that puts us in the scenario of having a lot of light manufacturing and not having the residential. And that's why I think the third option that was adopted as a master plan was a mixed use on the one side, that you're still utilizing a large degree of low density residential, single family homes that preserve the intent of the neighborhood. You're surrounding, in many cases, you have the Taylor Farm, you have the AC property, you have some other property to the west that's going to keep this fairly beautiful from a standpoint of you're not seeing high density housing, you're not seeing large apartment buildings. You're seeing more of the single-family homes. And I think the other aspect with the master plan was because of that additional road that was going to be coming through, that created some other challenges from a residential standpoint, and that's why there was some agreement to go with a higher density residential in that instead of light industrial in that one area, which was the key driver on getting the sewer and the water coming in, right. And that the rest of that, especially when you overlay where the road was going to be cutting through the Johnson's property, meant there's a lot of traffic circling that area, which also tends to say residential would be a little more challenged here, that the light industrial would give a better overall valuation. I could be wrong in my recollection of that, but to me that seemed to be the option that was kind of determined to be the best. And so the challenge that we have right now is that according to the master plan, that is what was agreed and approved and put in code, that we now have before us the master plan that says there's light, low density residential on the east side, and there's light industrial on the west side, with a corner there of community commercial, which is typically what you would see with a Maverick or with some type of residential or some type of retail gas station or something that accommodates the area. And so it's a difficult thing right now to come back. So here we have an applicant that is here to say, I'm making an application to go ahead with what is already master planned and what is already agreed with, that is full conforming with what was decided a while ago. And it's hard at this point to be able to say, well, no, we're going to change our mind and go back through the process to say either we change the master plan, and which might be, I guess, what you're saying, Brent, is I don't know if I voted for this, but now I'm not sure if I like the light industrial, or whether there's some other avenue. So personally, I feel a little stuck. I'm not sure what to do because the application is in compliance with the master plan that has been done as part of the annexation, and it's just a challenge to say, okay, well, how do you deny that from a standpoint of we're rethinking the master plan? And so I don't know. I'm looking for a little, I guess, legal counsel on that, or a little input from that standpoint to say, if it's already established as the master plan, what options do we have?
Thank you, Jamie.
If I may, maybe just
rambling, I do that all the time.
Maybe just speak to Councilmember Seastrand's comments. When the City Council deliberated over these different general plan options, there was an understanding based on the approved general plan that was adopted that as a city we would go back and size the utilities to the specific parcels as designated. So while there may be a desire to modify uses, I just want to let the council know that a modification in use can dramatically modify the utilities, modifies the impact fees, and, for example, going forward and changing something from light industrial or low density residential to higher densities or to a different use, a significant hard industrial type use, for example, the utilities and the infrastructure in the area cannot accommodate that, and as a result would need to be significantly changed. And so there was method in moving forward with the general plan considerations, because as a result of that then led to the sizing and construction of utilities that are actually still underway.
So changing it at this point would mean what?
Well, you actually would have to resize and essentially upsize potentially all the utilities.
Yeah.
And the financing associated with that, you remember this was a reimbursement relationship we're entering into with those that are developing in this area. And so this is a relationship where a developer is upfronting the cost of utilities and reimbursement is being made as impact fees are being made. That whole financial arrangement would change dramatically if, in fact, all of this general plan were amended and specific uses were to change in a significant way. Thank you.
Any other comments, Sam?
So Jamie, on that note, in other words, for that property to the north there, if that was developed as low-density residential with everybody having a yard with, sprinklers running, you're saying that would require much more water than...
Yeah, there's not the capacity as currently designed to accommodate what you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Just, again, wouldn't the developer pay for that? If residential?
Because you'll remember that the utilities were sized based on what capacities are available, what resources are available. So, for example, a situation where changes are made, it could impact a mile of utilities. It could impact based on location and proximity to other utilities. It could vary dramatically as to what those changes could be. Obviously, we're looking at a situation here where we're extending sewer line, for example, all the way down to our southern border. And so if you start changing uses along that path, that could require a significant upsize in the size of the utilities as you move, progressively north. That's just the sewer, for example. I'm not a utility expert, but our engineers can speak to that, and they can speak to the modeling that was done to suggest, these are the number of connections we could accommodate within this annexation area. This is the estimated cost of the infrastructure, and based on the cost and what we anticipate to be the size of the utilities, then that translates into the impact fees that were assessed and have already been paid. So not only would we be changing the rules of the game, but we would be changing the rules of the game in the middle of the game.
Any other comments? So personally, I'm a little bit torn, as Brent is, and possibly Mark, I'm not sure. My personal feeling is I would like to continue it, and I would love to hear what those costs are if you did on the west side of the road, if you were to do residential all the way up, how much additional cost that would be and what the impact fees.
But I think there's a cost tied to it, but there's actually a undoing of what's already been done. So we actually would have to go in, dig up the pipe, replace new pipe.
Sure, I understand. I just would like to find out what that cost would be. I understand where you're coming from. Sam?
I'd like to make a motion to proceed.
Okay.
I move that we, by ordinance, amend the zoning map of the City of Orem by rezoning the property at approximately 1750 South Geneva Road from the OS5 zone to the M1 zone.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Leray.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay?
Aye. I just want to say I know we put this together in 2014, but we change ordinances and zones all the time. Nay.
Okay, Dave and Tom?
Nay.
Okay, Tom, it's up to you.
I said aye.
Okay, so it appears that the ordinance passes, if I'm reading that correctly. Okay. All right, so thank you for attending and appreciate it. We'll now go ahead and move on to public hearing on setbacks. This is a PD5 amendment, amending Article 22-1117 of the Orem City Code, reducing the setback from 30 feet to 5 feet along 200 East in the PD5 zone. Jason is our presenter.
Thank you, Mayor. So this only affects the property that abuts on 200 East. So you can see this property here would be affected, and then this property is what is being affected. This little section of existing structure, which was used as an outdoor storage facility for a previous retail tenant. They want to actually now finish as a retail space. If you recall, probably 6 months ago when the owner of this development came in and actually had a parking reduction over the old, because of the BRT coming through, they actually calculated this as actual retail space in their reduction. So when the council approved that, this space was actually included in that to be converted to retail. So as far as parking, there would be no issues, but this would actually, where you see the property line now, would be approximately 5 feet from the right-of-way. They would enclose it and then be another storefront for the development. I'd be glad to address any questions.
So you're really not changing anything, you're enclosing.
The only thing would be the elevations would obviously be enclosed and look similar to what is there now, but yeah, it would be now usable space.
And is the applicant here? And could you introduce yourself?
My name's Brady. Brady Morris. I work with Ensign Engineering, representing the owner.
Okay. Any questions from the council? Sam?
I mean, that little turn there on the road is kind of unique. Have we ever had traffic accidents there where, even if it was just somebody falling asleep at the wheel and just driving straight in? I mean, or would we be essentially codifying any existing safety hazards that we've had trouble with in the past? Or is this, have we?
I'm not aware of any. I mean, our engineer and the traffic engineer both have reviewed this request and have no issues. That didn't come up. I didn't review the police records, but I'm not aware of any.
So, are you done? Go ahead. So if you're pulling out of that parking lot and going to the right, at least for me anyway, I'd be looking right through that netting to see what's coming the other way. Because I know you do an S-turn right there. So my question is, are we creating any liability with visually not being able to see around that corner when that is enclosed in?
To my knowledge, with our transportation engineer, that there would be no issue. The stop bar may have to be moved up, or the visibility may have to be, but he has reviewed it and is comfortable with the proposal.
Can you go back to that again?
This one? Oh.
Well, actually the one before that, that one. I mean, is there a way to bring that back like another 1 or 2 feet from the corner? I don't have a problem with it going out to the sidewalk necessarily, but boy, that corner to me looks like it could be dangerous once that's closed in as far as visibility. I mean, I'd be more comfortable with it a foot back on both sides, but maybe our traffic people, I don't know if they're here, but
I don't know if they're here. So they're requesting 5 feet. So if the council's uncomfortable, they can make that a different number.
And so what is it? I'm sorry. What is it right now on that corner? It's obviously not 5 feet.
It's approximately 5 feet. Yeah. Well, as you go in, so from the property line, so the sidewalk's probably.
So it looks 5 feet further back, but right at that very corner, it doesn't look like you're 5 feet there.
So the structure itself would have to be 5. So they would, whatever new structure they build in would have to be 5 feet.
So, Mayor, if I may, if the particular question you have relative to that corner, if there are particular site triangle concerns, I believe those concerns would be addressed through the development review process.
Yeah.
So there is a safeguard in place to ensure that there's an appropriate, I guess, view corridor for that particular corner.
That's what I would like to see. When you get it to the 5 foot angle, are you okay with seeing what's happening?
And that's a matter of, we're working with the architect and applicant to make that happen.
We'll definitely have to review that.
And while we're on that note, my thought was if all we had was the sidewalk there and you have 2 or 3 people standing in that corner, on the cell phone, not paying attention, that site triangle might be gone, anything that you had there. So that I kind of share that same concern. Is as long as we can make sure that corner is safe, then I wouldn't have any issues with that.
Yeah, and what this ordinance is, it just allows them 5 feet. It doesn't exclude them from meeting any other safety site triangle. Those types of issues we'd also consider during the site plan.
I mean, if I were to make a motion, I would want to put that in there that, in fact, it meets the safety standards. So,
okay.
Any other comments from the council? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to the public. Anyone who would like to make a comment, please hold your remarks to 3 minutes and give us your name. Seeing as how no one's coming forward, we'll close the public comment portion of our public hearing and bring it back to the council. Any thoughts or questions? Okay, I'd like to make a motion then. I would like to move that the City Council amend Article 22-11-17(1)(2) of the Orem City Code to reduce the setback in the PD5 zone along 200 East from 30 feet to 5 feet, so long as it meets the safety standards of the, what's the terminology used? Corner site.
Clear vision area.
Site triangle.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember McDonald.
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Spencer.
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
Councilmember Seastrand.
Aye.
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 Okay, the ordinance passes. Thank you. Appreciate it. So now we'll move on to item number 20, which is a public hearing considering the public input on the proposed transfer of funds from the enterprise funds to cover general fund utility costs over and above administrative and overhead costs. We have Richard Manning and Brandon Nelson as our presenters, and we did hear a question from Phil Snellgrove earlier from the public as to how this works. So maybe we could have an explanation from you on that.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. This public hearing is required by the state to clarify how any transfers are coming back from the enterprise funds to a general fund. And we believe as we've gone through this, we're complying with this exactly, and we can show.
This is required by the state of Utah.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So the city of Orem uses itself the same services that all the residents do. We use water, sewer, stormwater, street lighting, and we're required to pay the retail rate for those. So we get to the point we could either raise taxes to pay it, because the general fund must pay the enterprise funds for those, the same rates that we charge our users.
And the enterprise funds are different from the general fund.
Yes, they are. They're run as independent businesses, and
right.
Yeah.
So they're basically water, they're sewer, things like that, yeah, where they're actually an independent business within the city, so to speak.
So what we've opted to do is we had the choices of we could raise taxes to do it so that we make the payment and pay for the services. We could cut some services in the general fund so that we could then give the money over to it, or we could transfer funds. And that's what we've opted to do, is transfer the funds so we comply with the intent of the law. And the reason we do that is the same people who pay water rates, by and large, are the same people that pay the property taxes. So they would be they're paying for one way or the other. We put in our own rate structure, servicing our own needs, so it's already covered. So here's how it works. The water usage for all of our properties is $900,000, sewage $16,000, stormwater $130,000, and street lighting $15,000. So the general fund, which is where police, streets, parks, cemetery are all located, the general fund puts the money into the appropriate enterprise fund in the amounts shown here on the screen.
Just like I would do as a homeowner.
Yeah, and then via a transfer back, we transfer that same amount of money back to the general fund.
So the enterprise fund has that much more income that it has received.
So it's made whole from what they've done, then we take it back via this process, and
pay it into the general fund.
The result is we have paid for the utilities, we take it back so that we don't have to either reduce the services provided, police, fire, streets, parks, etc., or we didn't have to raise taxes. So the spirit and intent is complied with. And we've gone through the process of bringing the money back in the way the state has asked us to do. So these next slides will go over what the state says we need to cover.
Councilmember Lentz has a comment.
Could you go back one slide, please? So the percentages you're listing there, 4.1%, you're saying that's 4.1% of all of the water charges throughout the entire city. So if I pay my water bill and let's say it's $50 one month, then about, what's the math on that? 4% of $50, that's going toward water in the parks and the cemetery, this building.
Yeah, $2
like that.
Would be $2.
Okay. So, and Mr. Snellgrove, I don't want you to feel alone because we get this question every year, and I still don't think we figure out the magic of how to explain this in a way that we can communicate that clearly. And but this is essentially we're paying a very small portion of our own utility bill goes to pay for all the city's utility bills to keep our property taxes. So that's how it keeps our taxes low. So. Okay.
So
and one thing I was going to say, I think if there are further questions, I think Richard and Brandon would be available to answer them individually. So.
And I don't know if Mr. Snellgrove would remember, but back before I even came to Orem, when he had his utility auditing company, he would come see me at my prior employer. Okay, here's where the revenue comes from for the enterprise funds in question. We sell the product, connection fees, their impact fees, some interest earnings, which gratefully it's a little bit higher than it has been in the past immediate years. But you can see this is where it comes from, and you'll see at the bottom it says surplus. The surplus is from the rates have been sized to have the capital replacement program that's needed to keep the systems viable. And we're paying for it with cash instead of borrowing the money. So we do generate more income than we need in a given year to hold for another year, and then we appropriate it in the budget process and build a project with it. So the surplus is designated for capital needs and is built into the rating structure so that we avoid going into debt. And that's the process we're using. We should always be seeing an appropriation of surplus in these funds. Now, on the expense side, same types of things of personnel, operations, capital. The capital that's in this year's budget is by and large in these utilities. And in water, for example, all of them, they have fleet needs. They are replacing lines. They're starting to set aside money on the water side to build a tank a couple of years in the future. On the wastewater side, again, some line replacement. For years they've been talking about tackling a struvite problem at the wastewater reclamation plant. They will start tackling it this year. On the stormwater side, their focus has gone to the West Union Canal projects since that canal is being abandoned. And so they've moved all those projects forward, and that's where the lion's share of their money's going.
Richard, have we gotten a definition of where everybody's at with regards to that canal? I mean, we're saying we don't want to participate. Are they abandoning the canal? Who has the liability? Who's doing anything with it? Is it just everybody walking away?
I would have to ask either.
When you find out, could you send an email to the council? Reed?
The West Union Canal Company has not disbanded yet, but they have the wheels of progress moving forward and will do so. Their shareholders haven't voted to disband the company yet. There are still some major shareholders, particularly UVU, that... But
their intent is to disband.
That's correct.
And then what happens?
And then they will walk away from the canal. The state law allows them to just state that they are no longer in the irrigation business and can walk away from the canal.
And if we discontinue to use it?
If we If we continue to use it?
No, if we discontinue to use it.
Continue to use it, then it just sits there, and no water should get into it or be conveyed, so nothing.
But I mean, liability-wise, if somebody's hurt, if some
that's
heavy
exactly
rainfall.
That's exactly why we want to get out of it, because as soon as they disband and our stormwater is still in it, we would be liable for.
Sure. I'm just curious, you know, nobody seems to have an answer as to who's.
State law allows them to walk away, and then that portion of the canal would then belong to the property owner.
So would the property owners be notified that has occurred and it's now part of their property? And would it be deeded over to them in individual deeds, or?
I believe that's correct.
Whether they want it or not?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
When you're referring to the property owner, do you mean somebody that has a house right next to it?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
A majority, I believe the majority of the canal is an easement that goes through that area. They own portions of it.
So if they don't want the liability and they refuse.
State law is not clear on exactly where the liability would lie once that company disbands.
Okay.
That's how it's been explained by Heather to us. It has a
seems pretty nebulous.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, Richard.
This current slide is just a little bit more expanded view of what the detailed expense information is as you go through the other categories of it. One thing to point out in all of these, debt is going down as we pay off our current obligations. The administrative and transfer information, the general fund and other funds provide each other services all the time. For example, there's a billing component that is handled by people who are employed in the general fund. Those charges go back to the appropriate utilities. There's a fleet need, there's IT needs, etc. All of these are shown here. The dollar amounts are coming out. And as you go down to third from the bottom, the transfer fee return, that's the money that has been shipped in as revenue, then would show as an expense coming back out if this is approved. Some of the fees are considered contracted services, are billing. There are employees who are employed in other funds who provide service for another fund. That's all accounted for. And that it makes it easy so that you can show what the true cost of an operation is. And that's the end of the hearing. Any questions?
So if there's no questions by the council, this is a public hearing. We'll open it up for anyone who wishes to make a public comment. Please hold your comments to 3 minutes and give us your name.
Am I correct in remembering when the rate Phil Snellgrove.
Thank you.
The rate increase was proposed, that it was based upon system expansion, not on personnel or operating or other matters. I have no objection to funds being transferred from the one to the other, but why is there $1 million surplus?
Sure. Richard can answer that.
Okay, Mr. Snellgrove, I believe what you're looking at, if you look on the screen, $1 million is being taken from the reserves in the water utility in particular up there for capital needs. It was money that was been set aside in prior years, will be spent on a project this coming year.
Okay. So what year is this based on?
This is for fiscal 19, which starts in July.
So the last current fiscal year?
No, the one we're going into.
What we're going into?
Yeah.
The projections.
But we know we have the $1 million, and we're going to spend it on a capital project in the fiscal 18-19 year.
So in our financial statement, it lists what the capital improvement projects are, and we're trying to do a pay-as-you-go. So we're putting money in the bank, and then we're using that to replace a water line, to go towards water storage, going towards sewer pumps on the sewer side, stormwater sumps on the stormwater side. So we have a capital improvement program for infrastructure going in, and what we're doing is that we're putting money away into our surplus and then using that to purchase new water lines, new equipment, new sumps, etc.
Well, then the question is, are those improvements paid out of the general fund?
No.
No, they're not.
No. They're paid out of the surplus of these various funds that are money's already put away for.
Okay, then why?
So those are two different items.
If those funds in surplus are needed for physical improvements, why are we transferring it to the general fund?
Okay, we're not. Part of...
They're two different items.
Yeah. The surplus you're talking about is money that's sitting in their reserves, akin to their bank account that they've saved over time, and now they're going to buy some new lines, some new meters, etc. On the operating side, the money that the $900,000 in water is money the general fund owed for water usage by the rest of the city to the water fund, and so that we don't have to either cut our services or raise taxes to make that payment, we just send it right back as part of a transfer. So they were paid, but they give it back, and the capital side sits separately because the
for improvement
rate structure is made in a way that it takes care of the capital needs. And this is truly, at this point, an ongoing operational issue that we go through, and
they're really two complete separate items. So one is capital improvement, the $1 million surplus. The other is we're required by the state to pay for the use of our water. We pay it, we receive it in our enterprise fund, and then we turn it back into our general fund, so there's no cost to the citizens. So they're two separate items. Sam, did you have a comment?
Yeah, earlier Mr. Snowgrove had raised a good point about the 5-year plan versus, I think you said, an 8-year plan. So when we reviewed this a little over 2 years ago, we looked at, I think option A was 5 years and 7 years, 10 years, and then a bonding option. And we settled on the 7-year option. So it was pretty close to what you were suggesting there with the 8-year. I can't remember what the specific percentage was as far as what the rate change was versus the 5-year option, but the one we settled on was pretty close to the one that you were discussing earlier. So
I still don't understand why there needed to be a rate increase of the size that was put in place when, according to the calculations that McDonald and I came up with, it could have been paid for with approximately a half of that rate increase.
So, sure. What I'd recommend is get together with Councilmember McDonald and go visit with Brandon and Richard, and the four of you walk through the calculations you're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
And we appreciate it. Anyone else care to make a comment? All right, so this is a public hearing. We will close the public comment of the public hearing and bring it back to the council. And basically, we're doing what was recommended, holding a public hearing. I don't believe any action is needed. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, on to the budget. We've
Number
gone through
21.
Several points.
So can I just announce that first?
Okay, I'm sorry.
So this is a public hearing to adopt the final fiscal budget for fiscal year 2018-19. It's an ordinance approving and adopting a budget for fiscal year 2018-19, adopting compensation programs, adopting fees and charges, setting the property tax, franchise tax, municipal energy sales and use tax, telecommunications license tax, transit room tax, and the E911 fee rates. And we'll turn it over to Richard and Brandon.
Thank you. Apologize for getting ahead of.
That's all right. I know you're excited.
Yeah, it's the big day. as we go into this year, it's $117 million. Getting a budget to balance is kind of like a three-legged stool. You need everything to be there to make it all work. The new revenues for the entire budget are almost $97 million. That handles the operations, the personnel side of things, the debt payments, etc. Then the transfers showing movement of monies between the various funds for services that have been rendered. That's another leg of it. And because we're using monies we've set aside to pay cash instead of bonding, you have appropriation of surplus, which as long as we're following the same format, there will almost always be an appropriation of surplus every year to pay for capital needs. And as long as it's going for those things, we'll be meeting the intent of how the rates are structured in our various utilities. The $97 million, that's all the water fees, sewer fees, properties, taxes, sales taxes, franchise, the fees for various services. That's what it all sums up to. The city is divided up into a lot of different funds, and they have specific needs. Money goes into those funds and is spent by those funds and can only be moved between them as outlined by state law. The economy for all of fiscal 19, economists seem to agree that it looks good. There are things on the horizon, but the unfolding of that looks like we'll get past fiscal 19 and fiscal 20. We'll tackle as we get there. This is paid for through the rates, the taxes, and as you can see on the screen, our water rates, even with the increases we've had, are still below.
And this is with the increases.
Yes.
Okay.
Ours are with the increases. At the timing we put these together, we may be looking at other cities' last year's rates. So even at that rate, we are looking very good. When you go over to franchise tax, everyone's at 6%, so there is no average. There's only 6% that's down the bottom right.
Richard, one thing I might mention, the Provo City Council met, I believe it was a week ago, and they finally agreed and voted to move forward with looking at how to fund a new water reclamation plant. And they're looking at a figure of $220 million, and they're trying to get it done in the next 2 to 3 years. So anyway, thankful for our water reclamation side, the improvements we've made, and that we're meeting the standards already right now without an additional $220 million.
The people in Public Works have been very good and very had a lot of foresight in how they've put the plant together. The property tax here, we do not have the new rate, and the county has a deadline that's into June, and we almost always have adopted a budget prior, but since we're not looking for any kind of a property tax hike, we will adopt what they give us, the number that they give us. And so when it comes to the motion, it'll be that we'll adopt the number as it comes. But they're not close to having it. Any question on the rates here?
Councilmember Seastrand.
What impact would the property tax rate have with the latest change the legislature made on freezing the tax rate? Wouldn't we expect it to be the same as what it is there?
The way the state runs the property tax system, our rate ever since we got over the recession has just been slowly chipping away, going down. So leaving it as is would be beneficial to us. We're quite accustomed to seeing the rate just incrementally go down.
Yeah, based on the truth in taxation requirement. But where they came back and they said, we're gonna freeze the rate now.
So when they freeze the rate before, if your house value goes up, to keep the same cost for your property tax, your rate goes down. So if your rate goes, if the property goes down in value, your rate goes up, you pay the same property tax. By freezing the rate, that is not going to float.
We get more.
And in fact, our housing is going up 10% a year. So 67% of our property tax is for the school district, and that's what this affects is the school district. It's my understanding. So
But does it not affect the city and the county as well?
I don't believe so. I believe it's just the school district. And 67% is going to go up by 10% a year if our property values keep going up, because your sales tax, your property tax rate is frozen, so it's not going to go down as the house goes up. Yeah. So we're in fact going to see an increase in property tax rates, and I think you'll see the citizens come to the city council and ask them why, and it's nothing to do with us.
Yeah. We don't have that data available to us what they would do. So until we get the number, we don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah, it's a 5-year item, and they were talking about bringing in $85 million a year into the education coffers for the state of Utah through us paying higher property taxes.
Okay. On the expenditure side, it's the same thing, the same philosophy of three-legged stool. Personnel, operations. If you remember back on the almost $97 million, that's where that goes. The capital side, in the utilities, they have a component of their rates cover the utilities, and by and large on the general fund, we use for capital monies that we didn't spend in a prior year. Okay, again, here's more of a detailed viewing of what's been allocated in all the different funds. Now, in this year, there are several new positions. We have 2 new police officers. Our 311 will get a new person. There's a new dispatcher, economic development analyst, a new engineer, someone in community services, helping with CDBG issues, and as you can see, senior program assistant librarian, etc. Also, there's some changes with jobs with existing employees where they will have a change in their status, so we've allocated a little bit more money there. The dollar amounts shown here are the net change to the budget. Some funding sources come from others. We're showing the net increase. And we have several fees and charges. We'll go over those if you have questions, but that has covered the budget on what's been there. You've seen things throughout. We started in February. So now we'll turn it over to any questions.
Any questions from the council?
I was just going to ask, does that include benefits, those numbers there?
Yes, that's the net cost.
Councilor Lentz?
So, Richard, I gave you a heads up about this in the work session because I had asked when we had the initial hearing on this, you agreed to do kind of a chat with a bureaucrat type session on Facebook, and I don't think you've had a chance to do that yet. Can you give me kind of an ETA of when you'd expect to be able to do that, just to give the public an opportunity to ask questions and understand some of the nuances of what's changed in this year's budget?
We could get it later this week or next.
Okay. And I mean, we'd want to give a little bit of lead time so that if somebody wants to be on there live, that they have a chance to, prepare and work that into their schedule. As far as the actual numbers, this seems like a very minor issue, that the total impact is only $4,500. But it does concern me that the budget shows our salary increase, not that we make that much on the city council, but our salary increase mirrors what the city staff are receiving, but 1% of that is cost of living adjustment, 3% of that is merit-based. I understand, a 1% cost of living adjustment just to kind of keep things level for us, but I'm not comfortable giving ourselves a merit increase, and it actually comes to about 3.8% of a merit increase. So, again, the impact is only $4,500, but I would like to see us back down to just that 1% cost of living adjustment. So,
any other comments from the council?
Yeah, Mayor, I've got a comment.
Yes.
Dave here. It's more so on the fees in Appendix B, page 38 and 39, on the youth sport fees. I'd recommend that I'd like to see that we keep the rates as they were in the 17-18 year and not do an increase, since we're waiting on the study from Zions Bank on the recreation fees.
Okay.
I have a comment too, Mayor, when I can.
I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
To Stan's last comment, I don't strongly disagree with him, but I would say that we did not adjust the compensation to the rate that the Citizen Committee had suggested 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. Forgive me if I don't remember the exact date. And so while while his statement might resonate with citizens, we're still below what the Citizens Committee had recommended, so I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
May I respond?
Sure.
And if that's the case, then can we set up a citizen committee to make that decision for us? Frankly, the most uncomfortable part to me is the fact that we're the ones setting our own salary. And so I believe Provo, if I'm not mistaken, they have that once every 4 years and essentially make that recommendation, and it's just up to them if they're going to accept or reject it.
Yeah, you ultimately make the decision how you want, do you want staff to review it? Do you want a citizen committee to review it? It's kind of your call. What we're recommending is just a matter of, as you've represented, just keeping up with staff, but if you want to convene a citizen committee, you're welcome to call and set up a group to review that.
And to that point, we haven't, even with this increase, we're still substantially below what the city committee recommended.
So we do have a report from the Citizen Committee that was published and given to all the city council members. If wanted, I can give a copy to Sam. Anyway, any other comments?
I believe Mr. Spencer.
Yeah, Dave. Dave, are you there?
Wasn't the page 38-39?
So could you reiterate what your thought was, and maybe Richard could...
So just on the youth sports, there were a few like swimming and baseball, and I think that was... it on the increases, that if we just keep those as the 2017-18 we had last year until we have the Zion study, and I spoke with Carl and he thought that was okay.
So you're suggesting no fee increases on the youth sports until Carl does a study?
Well, until the Zion study comes out, I don't know when that is. It's coming out this year. Is that right, Jamie?
I believe it's out.
I think it's actually been included in these fees. So what you have is representative of the Zion study reflected in this current fee schedule.
But is Carl there? Because that's not what we had talked about.
Carl, if you got a minute. It's a long walk from the back row, I know.
I think we're all correct. It represents a little bit of what I think we'll see from the Zions. On that, it was meant to be a step increase to what I think they'll get to with the Zions. But if we want to delay that until we have a final report, they can explain the number.
So what you're suggesting, Carl, is what we have in the budget is only a fraction of what Zions is recommending. So are we suggesting we wait until we get the final Zions report and then adopt the full fee?
That'll be up to the council, but this is going to be a step. I believe they'll be higher than what was recommended this year.
If you'd like to hold on and wait and we can adopt the full fee, I'd more than willing to do that.
I think what we need to do is really look at every group and make sure everything's in line. So that's why I just wanted to hold off, and then we can discuss it. Not picking on one certain group. So just trying to be fair.
I guess I would represent, I believe this is fair. At least from staff's perspective, what we've presented we believe is fair.
And just looking at philosophically, people have options. So there's a market component in this type of a fee in recreation, because you can enroll in Linden, Provo, Orem, and people do move around. The Zion's fee is looking at what is most recovery needed. And there are times you can do it, there are times it's not wise to do it.
So this might not be a proper question, but if we were to either accept the fees the way they are or leave them at last year's rate, once we get this study, can we then make an adjustment at that point as to wherever we're at?
I guess and I will editorialize here, I guess my fundamental frustration with this conversation is several years ago you asked us to right-size these fees and make them commensurate with the cost of providing services in the city. So we have done that, and now in times of healthy revenues, the suggestion is we roll all of that back. So we're more than happy to do that, but I'm quite confident in a few years you're going to ask me to go the other direction again based on where we are. If you're wanting those who benefit from the programs and from the services of the city to pay an appropriate share of those costs, I believe we have tried to reflect an appropriate share of those costs in this budget.
So what is the study and when does it come out?
It's a whole citywide project. It's not just here. I don't have a timetable when they'll report.
The purpose of the study was to actually right-size the fees in this current fiscal year. Am I correct?
Yes, and to a great extent been applied. And I was under the understanding, by and large, it's finished.
Oh, you're thinking the study is finished?
Yes.
Is that correct, Carl? I mean,
well, Carl's not the one doing the study.
So
Richard is the one that done the study.
Who's got the study?
I have not seen final numbers on the rec side. Is where I'm at. I've seen preliminary numbers for that, and take the explanation that I've got on those numbers.
You as a council saw the study in a work session several months ago.
Is this related to the impact fee study?
No.
No.
Okay.
People did it.
Is it the same presentation where we walked through?
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
So the study has been done, shown to us, so we're not waiting on a study.
No.
We're not waiting. I mean, I'm getting the impression there's an additional study. We're not waiting.
But it's the same study. It's
okay.
just, I worked with them just 4 weeks ago, and I haven't seen a final report from them.
Okay.
Is that the recommended charges from the study are included in this fee schedule? So what we're representing and bringing to you is the recommendations of that study included in this fee process.
And in reality, they've actually been reduced by another $15,000 with the change that was made on the care side tonight, in effect.
No, $30,000.
Well, compared to what it was originally proposed tonight. Yeah.
Well, and I think the concern is the waiting on the study was more so the soccer, the Group 4 fees, and the Group 2 fees on the per year, per season. So I didn't want to pick on those groups, and I wanted to wait to see what the exact report showed. So, but that's fine. If nobody's in favor, then so be it, and then we figure it out.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, so this is, Richard, have you got any more to say? Okay.
Just answer any questions.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and we'd like to open it up to the public. So anyone who'd like to stand up and make a comment, please hold your comments to 3 minutes and give us your name. Seeing as how no one's making any comments, we'll close the public comment portion of the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Any comments from the council? Okay. Well, I'd like to make a motion that the City Council by ordinance approve and adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 budget adopt the compensation programs, the fees, the charges, the property tax, the franchise tax, municipal energy sales and use tax, telecommunications license tax, transient room tax, and E911 fee rates. Is there a second?
Are you comfortable making that adjustment to bring our adjustment down to the cost of living?
No, I'm in agreement with Tom that was recommended by the Citizens Committee before. And we're happy to have another Citizens Committee. I don't have a problem with that. But I would adopt the budget the way it stands.
With the fees that we were talking
With the fees.
I'll second that.
Okay. We'll start with Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
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 Oh, aye.
Aye.
Okay. Tom and Dave?
Aye.
Okay. Is there a second one there?
Dave?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye. I think we both said aye, sorry.
Okay. Good.
I did the same time.
All right. So the ordinance passes. And we'll move on. Jamie, are there any communication items?
We have gone through the redevelopment.
We haven't done any of that yet, but I'm just seeing if you've got any. Okay.
Mayor?
Yes.
I have a point of order I'd like a little clarification on, if I could.
Sure.
So, in the discussion previously with the Mansell property, it was a pretty close vote of 4-3. The motion on the table was to accept the proposal as it was. I'm not sure if the counter motion was to say to do a little more looking at it before making a final decision, or if it was to flat out deny it and not change it.
I never made a motion per se, but what I wanted to do was to make a motion to continue it so we could study out what the costs were of the land west of Geneva Road and north of the PD zone down below.
That was just a statement.
That was just a statement, but if I had my druthers, I would have made that motion. I would have liked to.
And the motion, that avenue would have entailed what? The city would have had to, what would you need to do to accommodate that, Jamie?
So I think, if I may, I reached out to Chris and to Neil in the course of this brief conversation with Mark, and we would really need to do kind of three things. The first one being we'd need to essentially evaluate the physical size and design of the utilities, including all lines and including the sewer facility capacity and design constraints, pump stations, so on and so forth. Then we'd have to look at the impact fees that are tied to that area. And then finally, we'd have to look at the development agreement that we entered into with Mr. Mansell to see how that would be impacted by this discussion.
And how much, from a resource standpoint, you're looking, that's a fairly significant project with the staff that's already fairly significantly committed. So what do you think would be the impact of doing that analysis in light of this?
Money and time.
So with the understanding that the next meeting would be scheduled June 19th, we could provide a cursory review or look at what we're talking about, but it would not be something that I think would be ready for action on the 19th.
And so from that, Mayor, how much, and the other members, how much information would you be looking for? Does a rough idea of the potential impact?
So a ballpark idea would be what I would be after.
So to go to an extreme level of detail to calculate it.
If the ballpark idea showed it not that it's really feasible, then that's one thing. If the ballpark thing showed that maybe a developer would want to do it or not, I don't know. I'd just like to see what it is.
So I would anticipate that if we were to go through a cursory review and it would suggest, it could potentially work, we're probably looking at 3 to 6 months before we could amend the general plan, amend the impact fee documents, revise any agreements if necessary, and then obviously do the engineering utility modeling tied to the lines, the treatment facilities, the lift stations, all of that.
The reason I'm asking is my thought is this. I think it's affecting basically two property owners, the LI there, the Mansell group, which was here and made the proposal, which was within the master plan that was approved by the council not too long ago. And then the other family is the Johnson family, and the Johnson family was very concerned about what the value does of that change to their property and their home where they're living. And so my feeling was that in light of what was already on the master plan, that gives some element of decision that had already been made by the council that I was okay with staying with the master plan. My thought, though, is that this is an important enough element that if a little further study and look at it would allow us to come back with a more definitive look, either from a standpoint of it saying, okay, Mayor, from your perspective, looking at it, it is the right thing. I think there's also an aspect from the Johnson family being able to say, is my property more valuable to me personally as single-family residential as opposed to light industrial? My gut feel is light industrial has a greater valuation than single-family residential, that they may come back and say, actually, as we've looked at it, we would prefer it to go forward with that. I just don't know if that aspect is worth, putting the city staff through that level of challenge.
Maybe I could just provide this comment. When we initially started down this path, we were talking about the most aggressive of development options being, I think Jason put up as kind of option A, which probably included over 3,500 what we call ERUs, equivalent residential units. We are at currently about 1,600 ERUs. I do not think you are going to have any developer come into this council chamber and request any less density. I think you are going to see all of them come in and push for the 3,500 model versus the 1,600 model, which to some degree I think was a happy go-between between the highest of densities and the lowest of uses. So I guess I would represent to you that I don't think this is going to be the first and only time you're going to have this discussion. And I know, for example, there's a developer that's interested just across the street from Mr. Johnson who is interested in putting in high density. And I don't know how many units to the acre is being talked about, Bill.
So personally, Jamie, I'm not interested in high density across the street. I understand what you're saying, and we have it as low density, I believe, or medium density. But this particular area where we've changed and put in a PD zone and on that one side of the street in that one section, I don't know where Mark's going if he wants to request a change, and he voted in favor, so he can do that. But personally, for me, the time and the effort to look at this
and the expense,
I think would be worthwhile, but not to the nth degree at this point, just to a ballpark figure to see where we're at and then to take a second look at it. I would support that and would like to do that. So it's up, I guess, to Mark.
Well, and just as the one who made the motion, the reason I made the motion is because I don't want to put our staff through the time and distraction and expense of going through that effort when we've already given them that long-range plan. This fits with that plan, and in my mind is a much better best use of that property than more single-family housing, which frankly I don't think the numbers would really pencil over in that area. So,
well, it may be a moot point, because in order to have it reconsidered, I need to make a motion to reopen it up, right? And someone's got to second that motion. Or give me some information on that, because my leaning is to say we're that close if a little more information without it being too egregious on staff allows us and to be able to make a final call. I think it locks in the rest of the plans on the east side as well, that says, look, this is now pretty well locked in, that we're not looking at higher density residential on the east side. It's if it's all going to be single family, it's all going to be single family, or it's going to be single family and as currently planned with the light residential. Then that clarifies, I think, expectations and hopes down the road. Sorry, Greg.
Okay. So this is from the City Council meeting policies and procedures. it says any two council members who voted in the majority on a motion approved or denied may request a reconsideration. So what we need first is two who voted in the majority say we want to reconsider this. If there are two that want to, then the council votes as a whole to reconsider the item. If that passes, then we renotice it and consider it at a later date.
So it's not it doesn't mean that the mayor can just do a different motion to reconsider it in 30 days. We've got to renotice everything, although it's probably the same anyway, right?
Yeah.
Councilmember Skinner has a comment.
I was just thinking here, we're in the process, back in our work session, we had our discussion on our vision for State Street. And I'd hate to have the feeling that, I think all of us know things change, and it's not going to be the same. I would hate to vote for anything on State Street that 10 years from now the council faces, maybe we fouled up this group and we need to tweak this a little bit. We need to look at it. We need to restudy it. I think that's part of our job, to do our due diligence, and I have no problem with, I don't want to give more work to the staff, but I guess that's what we're doing. But I'd like to see some kind of numbers on this.
Okay, and then I want to give some time to Mark.
If I could, the change that we're talking about, though, is not a subtle tweak. It's not just a refinement. We're talking about doing a 180-degree change from what was mapped out in that plan. So in my mind...
Well, that could happen with State Street as well. I just
don't think that's how I intend to act as a city council person, and I wouldn't expect those in the future to do it that way either.
If I may just share anecdotally, we have had a request this evening for light industrial. The property directly across the street is being planned for high-density residential at 14 units to the acre. So if you go into a parcel like that at 14 units to the acre, you are going to swallow up a very large percentage of those 1,600 ERUs. So that's why I'm suggesting that this is not a one-time occurrence. I'm quite confident that if there is a willingness to revisit it on this matter, there will be future requests and efforts on the part of our development partners to have this conversation again and again and again.
So my question would be, of those who voted for it, is there a second who wants to revisit it? So Debbie, I believe you voted for it, correct?
I don't want to revisit, no.
Okay. And Tom, I believe you voted for it.
I did. I'm still not 100% sure which direction Mark's trying to go, so maybe he could try to clarify his thought.
Thank you, Tom. My thought would be to say an additional 4 weeks to just solidify and make sure would be, I think, rewarding for both the property owners as well. Well, maybe not for Mansell. I think they'll be fairly upset. But I think for some of the other property owners, the Johnsons in particular, would allow us to really come back with a more cohesive solution. I just worry where it's such an important decision and it's close. If a little more information allows it to go from a 4-3 to a 7-0 or a 6-0, I think that creates a stronger overall plan for the region. So my desire would be to reconsider it. I still think down the road I'm going to be interested in the outcome from a few things, but rambling. My motion would be to reconsider it.
And if I may ask a question of our city manager, Jamie, you're concerned that we're going to continue to have additional questions about this, that the extra month doesn't give us a lot more clarity than we currently have. And this is, by putting it originally in the OS5, if I've gotten the letters and number correctly, we knew we were going to have to pivot and make some additional choices down the road. Is that, maybe you can add more clarity to that summary?
We put the, if I may, we put the property in the OS5 zone initially because it was a holding zone with the full expectation that we would require developers to come to us to make that zoning amendment request to ensure that whatever they were requesting was consistent with the general plan that the council adopted 3 years ago. So to some degree, it was a safety valve set up to ensure that we were keeping good track of the ERUs that we had tied to that area and, of course, to the overall impact fee cost structure that we established back then when we adopted those impact fees. I believe we can do a cursory review of the, the costs, but frankly, I believe, and I'm relying in part on the feedback from the public works staff that I had just a brief opportunity to talk with. The costs are significant if we were to upsize this infrastructure and make significant changes to the general plan that could accommodate significantly more density. And
this will not require, as far as residential units, like a multifamily would, correct, or high density?
No, but if, for example, you're talking about, like we discussed earlier, an R18 type situation, I think that would throw all the calculations out of whack. And maybe Chris and Neil could speak to that, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Sure. Before we speak to that, give me just one bit of clarification. I was thinking commercial development would take less strain on sewer and water than residential development, was what I was suggesting.
Yeah, that's correct.
That is correct, Tom. The density that's being proposed on the east side of Geneva Road that has not been presented to you is at 14 units to the acre. There are about 10 acres there. That would be 140 units. There are many variables that we would need to understand before we could run any calculations on this. We would need that direction from the city manager and the council tonight. If we're looking just at the 7-acre parcel, we can certainly analyze that. But if we're opening up the door to look at a variety of increases of densities and residential uses in the entire southwest area, then that will require a significant amount of time. To give you a preliminary report, we would anticipate at least a month to give you some preliminary numbers that would probably include a range of costs. We have done an impact fee study in Southwest Orem about 5 years ago that included medium density and higher density units, and that was to the tune of about 3,600 ERUs. And today, I believe we're at about 1,600 ERUs. There is some infrastructure that has been installed, that is in place. So we would also have other considerations to look at as well regarding we will have to undo what has already been done, meaning we may have to relay sewer lines and increase the size of those lines. Those have come at a significant cost, and who would pay for that are questions that I have. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have relevant to this decision.
If I could ask a question along that lines, then my intent is I don't think we're talking about anything on the east side. I think that stays as is based on the master plan. I think for me the question was light industrial versus also low density residential in these two parcels. So you're talking the Johnson's property, which is the left, and you're talking the Mansell property.
So for me, it's the same, except it's also the property to the north on the west side, low-density residential. So these two pieces, and if you carried it further up to the top of the wedge, not looking at trying to reinvent the east side.
So the conversion from light industrial to single-family residential.
On the property that's in question tonight.
On the property in question, and the rest of the area that we designated as light industrial, would
And we haven't seen anything that's you're talking about proposed for the east side. I don't know about that.
I'm not certain. I believe the Planning Commission has seen that, or it is in the works of being submitted and reviewed by the DRC, Development Review Committee.
So Mayor, just so that I understand, and we can put, are you talking about the entire west side?
The west side from where Mansell is proposing his industrial development up to the top. If you were to put low density residential in there,
and you would like to leave light industrial south of the Mansell property, well, because the entire west side of Geneva Road is identified, with the exception of the commercial area.
Well, and you have the PD zone there.
Yeah, but everything else is identified in the general plan as light industrial.
Right. If you look at the PD zone, and then that goes up towards where Mansell's wanting to do the industrial.
You have the commercial zone.
I wouldn't change that.
You have the PD zone, and then you do have a gap.
That's the
which is light industrial.
Right.
And then you have the Mansell piece. And then you have more light industrial.
So I'm saying from the PD zone up to the top on the west side, if that were to go low density.
Yeah. But I'm
not affecting the CC corner.
You have light industrial to the south, and you have light industrial to the north. Granted, you have a much smaller light industrial to the south than you do.
You'd probably need to look at that light industrial to the south then, because that would basically make it all, except for that.
Except for the PD and the commercial piece
would all be low density residential all the way to the north.
Sam Lentz has a comment and Brent Sumner has a comment. So Sam.
So question for Chris and then for Mark. So when we went through the impact fee study, there's a difference between the impact fee in that annexation area and the impact fees elsewhere. And I can't remember what that number was. But if we essentially doubled the number of ERUs going into that area, logically, would that gap double?
No, not necessarily. It'll increase just enough to increase the capacity of the utility required for that to provide that service.
Okay.
So I wouldn't foresee that doubling.
We let Brent say.
Oh, I just had one more question for Mark, actually.
Sorry, I'm rambling.
So, I mean, that wedge between Geneva Road and where that connector road is going to go to the airport, are you envisioning that being an ideal place to develop single-family homes?
I think that's why we originally put it as light industrial. But if the property owner there is saying, no, he really does want to develop that as single-family, then I suppose that's a possibility.
So, Councilor Sumner. Okay.
So just to answer Councilmember Lentz's question, in the fees that were adopted as part of the budget, the set sewer impact fees for just the city service area, the area excluding Southwest annexation, single-family residential per unit is set at $846. Does that sound right?
Do you have the total, not just like each component, but do you have the total between?
Yeah, it just says single-family residential per unit. And then in the Southwest annexation area, that same charge is $4,876. So it is more than 4 times the amount.
On the analysis, is it possible to do just an equivalent, that if we exchanged it from light industrial to single family, how many single family homes could we get for this without having to change impact fees or size of the pipe or any of that? To just say a switch from light industrial to residential.
And keeping the ERUs the same.
Keeping the ERU the same and just saying, okay, there's an equivalent here of you can get 50 homes or you can get 20 homes or you can get 100 homes or something.
If
we can certainly look at that and determine that.
If we did open this up, I would want to look at both. So I like what Mark said, what can we get for the money we've got? But also, what would the increase be if you went single-family homes in that wedge?
Right. So I think we could first determine how many homes could you get for that equal number of ERUs, and that might end up being maybe 1 home per acre, let's say, I don't know what that would be, but let's say it is. We could then increase that, and then to determine, how many more homes we could put on there based on available capacity.
And how many more homes can you put on there and what would the increased capacity cost? Do you understand what I'm saying? So instead of the industrial there, you put in single-family homes, and you go from the PD up to the top of the wedge, and what would it cost for that, for additional capacity for single-family homes? And Brent, you keep popping up. Did you?
Oh, my knee keeps hitting.
No, okay, I'm sorry. You've got a knee
Mayor,
that's wandering.
Long legs.
Tom?
Yeah, I think I can end this discussion. I'm not in favor of changing my vote.
Okay.
It seems way too complicated, so thank you for the lengthy discussion, but I think you don't have a second to change the vote.
Well, that's what we needed to hear from you, so you were the deciding vote.
Thank you.
I love power, and I'm humbled.
Okay.
Obviously, that's a joke. This is a tough issue, but I hear how confused we were on the discussion. Don't believe we'll have any clarity in a month. So that's why I'm not willing to change my vote.
Okay. All right, so that's dropped, and we'll move on. So, thank you. So at this point, we would like to adjourn, if you don't have any more, Jamie?
No, Mayor, just want to recognize you and wish you a happy birthday on June 1st, and we do have some treats after a fun-filled night like this.
I had somebody today, he said, well, how old are you? He says, you're 55, right? And I said, that's correct. So, anyway.
Well, happy 55th.
Who was running for election? Him or you?
Say what?
Who was running for election? Him or you with that statement?
No comment. Anyway, we would like to go ahead. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to the redevelopment agency of the city of Orem. Is there a second?
Second.
Could we just add a 5-minute break to that as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll take a 5-minute bio break and come back.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing it up.
That's your dramatic exit. Yeah. Fade to black.
Okay. I don't know what I think. I don't know that I'm.
I don't think you get any support for high density.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
It's all part of
Right.
You're ruining the value of my.
I didn't see this.
You know what? On his house, he could actually demolish it, put in storage sheds, or he could do the same thing that Mansell's doing.
Just his son. I'll put a single family residential residence. What we're saying is, do we have capacity in these lines to convert from light industrial to residential? If you've got an extra 150 BRUs
Yes.
for single family,
I agree.
I think if he goes and looks at it, says, okay, we got 20 acres and we get 400 an acre versus.
I told him as well, you can always move. You can, I had a good friend of mine that owned a big farm up in Lehigh, and he could see what was happening, so he sold it, moved down to Moroni, put the same operation in, like 1,000 acres, and lives peacefully in a beautiful community. And I said, so, if you want to recreate what you got, you can do that.
If you want to do that.
But I'm glad you did that.
I mean, my gut feel is that we actually still make
In my industry, I would have a higher level of tolerance for sitting over it in your work.
less of a split vote. I mean, my gut feel.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we approached it.
Why? Why?
Are you trying to flip my ear, Steve?
I know, I'm throwing that out there too.
It takes longer to go adjourn.
No, yeah, they have nothing to do with that idea. No, because they didn't resign at all. But what I'm saying is our general plan was based on a general contribution. Yeah. All right.
Sorry, that's what you got.
Just like we did for myself.
Well, you're getting it back.
Yeah. But I didn't know how was the transparency.
And what I would like to do is kind of grasp where they go.
Yeah, but Mansell, the general plan for Mansell was like.
No, you're just fine.
The surplus, which is just.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So when we did our calculations for how many years
it came about when I was asking you, when we were going through all of these capital items from that spreadsheet you sent, and I was more than available revenue. So I think originally it started somewhere in, I was lower than the 600 start.
Well, so that's what they want this, because there's one project. 200.
Steve, I just got to tell you, usually the backup. Except for I'm good.
I've only been sketched.
Someone at some point,
I know that I don't use it.
I'm excited.
In looking at your did you have we were using that stuff?
Actually, we have
There was quite a bit smaller.
so
Well, thanks for a 5-minute break. My Fitbit just said, take a 20-minute walk.
And I figured we don't have a lot of minutes left. We probably could just power through, but I needed to stretch my legs.
I know.
Good idea.
My behind.
Had a conversation. That's where you anticipated you were going to use.
All right, are we ready where we can start again? Tom and Dave, you still there?
Yeah.
Dave, you're in Miami, right?
Yes.
So 11:22 there.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Do you need a motion to adjourn?
No, we already adjourned. Now we've got to call to order. So I would like to call to order the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem. I'd first like to begin by approving the minutes of the Redevelopment Agency meeting April 17th, 2018. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Dave and Tom?
Aye.
Okay. Our first item is a public hearing on adoption of the RDA fiscal year 2018-19 final budget. And Richard Manning and Brandon Nelson are our presenters.
So nothing has changed since our tentative budget. I've had no discussions with anyone regarding making any changes to it, other than you'll notice the bottom section here. It came up in a because of a letter that we received in relation to University Place CDA. So we had not included anything in relation to that, even though it does actually go into effect in this fiscal year, and we had left it out, and because of some not sure exactly what number we wanted to put in there. So rather than try to set some sort of unrealistic expectation, and since every year we come and do a amendment to the RDA, a budget amendment to the RDA to true it up, we just wanted to, we were going to add a note in here that the CDA is in effect for the fiscal year, and that when we, next year at this time, when we come, we'll come with a budget amendment to true that up. Obviously at that time for the fiscal 2020 budget, we would have better information in order to put a more realistic kind of number into that budget.
Okay.
So that's really the only item that I wanted to bring up in relation to the RDA. Are there any questions in relation to that or to that particular item?
I don't have any. Sam, do you have some?
So with that item, it's essentially just a pass-through, right? So a portion of University Place's tax monies would come in and then would be returned to them, provided it's the post-performance rebate.
90% of it does, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And also there are qualifications that they use that money for infrastructure, and they would already show that that's been done. So
yeah, they've already done that.
Right.
That's the letter that prompted us making a note of that. Was that very letter was that they had done what they needed to in order to qualify. So.
Sure.
One question.
Yes, Councilmember Lurie.
Remind me of when the haircut revenue is complete. Or is there going to be a sunset to this, or
it does right here. So
okay, 2023.
Yep, that's when the last RDA completes its and the bond. This is when the bond completes.
Okay, thank you. I had forgotten.
And again, we've notated this every time, but I think it's worthwhile. We had basically 5 main RDAs that occurred in '85, and each one of those has returned 500% back to the city. And if you look at where those 5 are at, they're all major commercial centers of the city. So I'm thankful for those back in 1985 who had the guts to go ahead and put that through. That probably was not easy. So you don't have to
There's about $450 million increase in value in those 5 areas.
Yeah, and that will continue to pay out for the future as well. So
yeah, obviously.
I mean, that's huge. Okay, so any questions by the council? So this is a public hearing. I'll open it up to the public. Anyone who'd like to make a comment, please hold your comments to 3 minutes and give us your name. Seeing as how no one's wanting to come forward, we'll close the public comment portion of our public hearing and bring it back to the council. We are holding the public hearing by resolution to approve the budget. And so I move that the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem and the Board of Directors approve and adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we will start with Tom. Are you awake, Tom? 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 Okay, Dave, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Okay, Debbie?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, the budget passes. We do have an annual review of the bylaws. I recommend that the Board of Directors adopt the bylaws as written. for the redevelopment agency of Orem. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll start with you, Debbie.
Aye.
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 Dave?
Aye.
Tom? Okay. So with that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn to a meeting of the Special Service Lighting District of the City of Orem. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. I'd like to call to order the Special Service Lighting District of Orem and would like to approve the minutes of the Special Service Lighting District meeting of April 17th, 2018. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, our first scheduled item is a public hearing to approve and adopt the fiscal year 2018-19 budget. We will turn the time over to Brandon and Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. So as same thing as with the RDA, no changes or nothing has been brought to my attention since the time that the tentative budget was given. So I don't propose that we don't make any changes unless there are questions by you as to any particular thing related to the Special Service Lighting District. Then
any comments? Okay, this is a public hearing, so we'll open it up to the public for public comment. Anyone who would like to make a comment, please come forward, give us your name, hold your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no one coming forward, we will go ahead and close the public comment portion of the public hearing, bring it back to the council. Any comments? Anyone care to make a motion?
I move that we, the SLSD board, approve and adopt fiscal year 2018-2019 budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Dave, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Okay, Debbie?
Aye.
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 Okay, the resolution passes. We have the bylaws of the Special Service Lighting District, and I would recommend and move that the Board of Directors adopt the bylaws as written. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Brent, we will start with you first.
Aye.
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 Dave?
Aye.
Okay. So the bylaws are adopted as written. I move that we go ahead and adjourn adjourn the Special Lighting Service District's meeting and go to a meeting of the Municipal Building Authority of the City of Orem. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Okay, I now call to order the Municipal Building Authority of the City of Orem. I would like to approve the minutes of the Municipal Building Authority meeting June 13, 2017. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'd like to go to our first scheduled item, which is an annual review of the Municipal Building Authority of the City of Orem bylaws. Any changes in the bylaws? Okay, so this is not a public hearing. So as the Chief Executive Officer of the Municipal Building Authority of the City of Orem, I recommend that the Board of Directors adopt the bylaws as written. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We will start with you, Brent.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Okay. With that, I would like to make a motion to... Jamie? Sure.
Sorry, could I just make a comment? I do not want to make a long night even longer, but I'm afraid I've given you some bad information. And it relates to this question tied to the Southwest annexation area. And I want to make sure you have all the information in the event that what I just share with you now may be the reason you want to reconsider what you've already, a decision you've already made and then again made again. But Steve Earle made me aware of some information that I had honestly was not aware of in relation to a conservation easement that potentially does free up some capacity in that utility system. And I'd like to just give a minute to Steve so he can explain to you what happened. Steve?
Sure.
Well, this is based on my understanding and my recollection, so I can't say 100% for sure that this is totally accurate, but I believe that it is. So
I'm sorry to interject. As a formality, do we need to go back to our regular city council meeting?
I actually ran this.
Okay.
Their recommendation is let's share the information.
Okay.
If it necessitates a vote, then you would need to adjourn into a city council meeting again.
Great, thank you.
So when we were first doing this general plan and determining, the capacity, the number of ERUs that were determined that the system would handle was, I'm hearing different numbers, maybe 1,250, maybe 1,600. It doesn't really matter. But if you recall, the sponsor of that annexation petition was Orion McDougall, who was trying to do a kind of a high-density development on the Wilkerson farm property, sort of similar to the Mansell property. And it's my recollection and my understanding that when we addressed that capacity, we were factoring in that Wilkerson property was about 14 acres, and his proposed development was about 14 units per acre, which comes out at a little bit over 150 units. So my recollection is when we were allocating that and considering that capacity, we were essentially allocating 150 units or 150 ERUs to that Wilkerson property. Of course, ultimately the council never rezoned that property in accordance with his request. So that never happened. And then several months later, what happened was that property was purchased by somebody and turned into a conservation easement, which basically said it was going to be left as open space. So effectively, those 150 ERUs that we had figured would take up that much capacity in the system, in my belief, is that those ERUs were freed up, essentially.
What was agreed on was low density in the annexation, so that was like 4.
Well, that's a point we might have to look at, but my recollection is that, for example, the Mansell property, which was rezoned to PD, and that there's maybe 150 or 200 units on there, you'll notice that that was actually general planned as light industrial. Of course, that's not what it was rezoned to. It was rezoned to medium residential. I think something similar was effectively anticipated with the McDougall property, although it was shown on the general plan as what's the right word? Low density residential. It effectively was calculated as medium residential for purposes of allocating capacity. So again, my belief is that we would have freed up about 150 units of capacity by that going into a conservation easement. So I'm not advocating for one position or another, but I just thought you ought to have that information.
So let me just ask a question to Greg. How much time do we have for 2 council members to change their vote and request a revote?
7 days.
Okay. And Tom, are you online? So I think we've lost Tom for the evening. So I would suggest that we adjourn, and then maybe that'd give you a little more time to give us more information. And should Mark and Tom decide they want to revisit this after you give us the information, but prior to that 7-day period, then that could be done. So if everybody's okay with that, then I recommend that we adjourn. And I think we're supposed to adjourn over to the City Council work session area to have some strawberry pie and maybe some Kneaders. I'm not sure. But anyway, is there a second to adjourn? Second. Okay, everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.